I'm chairman of the Newly Farm Community Preservation Committee. I'd like to open this meeting now. It's 5:11 p.m. on March 2nd, 2026. I'd like to have everybody take a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody, for attending tonight. This is going to be a new form committee. We're on our agenda. This is going to be recorded on YouTube.
Excuse me, Robert. I'm sorry, but we are a posted meeting. I'm just reminded we're a posted meeting as the select board. So I'd like to call the select board meeting to order at 5:13 p.m. Roll call. Present. And Marcia from present. Thank you all.
And Veronica Cal present remotely.
And Veronica Cal is present. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I have a roll call of the members of our new committee?
Kim Greeno present.
Lance McNally present.
Sandra Lord present.
Rob Usula present.
Maria Milliken present.
And Robert Therian present. We don't have any additions and deletions here. We had our last meeting. What was that last meeting?
The 2/19.
February 19th. Yeah.
Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes of that meeting?
Yes.
Yes. Any corrections or revisions or comments?
No.
Can we have a motion to accept the meeting?
Motion to accept the minutes.
Second. Can we have a roll call vote?
Maria Milliken. Yes.
Rob Usula, yes.
Sandra Lord, yes.
Lance McNally, yes.
Kim Greeno, yes. Robert
Therian, yes. This is a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen and the Community Preservation Coalition. It's going to be a presentation and training meeting, and I am going to have Mr. Stuart Sagniria. Did I say that right?
That's okay.
He's the executive director. And he's located from the Boston offices. And so, Stuart, if you would take the floor.
Sure, and before I do that, I wanted to recognize Bill Rideout, who did a lot of the work with a group of people to get CPA adopted in town, and
Emma was very much fun.
Emma as well. It always takes a group of people to, start the process and convince everyone it's a good idea and collect the signatures and that sort of thing. So Bill contacted us 2-3 years ago, I guess, when we first started talking about it.
Right.
So,
And Stuart was a great help, and but basically we talked about towns and decided that we weren't going to go for a big CPA. We wanted something that was as affordable as possible with the exclusions, just because that did our town best. And I really thank everybody on this committee for doing it, jumping in and doing it, and the town for voting for it. And I hope it really can make an impact on our town.
Bill, can we ask you to give a general outline of how we got here to the public?
Sure. So the way we passed the CPA is we put it on via a signature petition. So you had to do that to get it onto the ballot. So the group of us volunteers went out to collect signatures. And I was just talking to you about hitting Apple Meadow as one of the best places where we hit enough signatures to get it on the ballot. And it was on the ballot on November 5th of 2024, the presidential election. And actually, Stuart had recommended that's one of the best ways to get a good turnout for a ballot question is to put it on when there's other elections going on, especially a big election. And, you know, we did a lot of public outreach to let them know how this would impact extending the rail trail and historic things and, you know, affordable housing and the outdoors. I think, you know, people saw that this would be a fair tax because of the exclusion for people who are lower income or moderate to lower income. And, they voted for it. We got about 60% of the vote, so which was pretty good because a lot of the CPA petitions that were on the ballot that year, the majority of them failed. So I really appreciate the Townsend voters going ahead and voting for this.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
I was gonna, I could, yeah.
Go ahead.
So it was a 55-45 split,
Was that what it
was
was?
that?
I remember it was, I mean, we passed it with one of the highest, like rates of all the towns in Mass that had it on the ballot this year.
That was
I think it
exactly my question.
above-
Interesting,
Yeah, I thought it was 6%, but.
interesting, thank you.
Yeah, I was gonna look that up. We're talking.
He tapped the records, he said, 10 minutes after the polls closed, said, what's the vote?
I was bugging you.
Yeah.
Let's see. No, I don't have it that.
Bill, this might be a detail that doesn't really necessarily matter, but the exclusion for the low income, what is that? What is that marking point?
So it is actually set by the state and it's set on a county by county basis, median income in the county. So it's actually the whole median income for, Middlesex County. And that is well over $100,000 for a family with just two people. And so that actually is updated each year as to what the cutoff is. I'm probably making those better than I do. But if you are making less than that, then you can be excluded, but you have to go to Vicky each year and fill out the form.
Thanks, Bill.
I said it's not as far away from Vicky as I could. I very much appreciate all the burden I put on her and
You would have just got hit.
I'm gonna stay away during this meeting as far as possible.
It was 55-45. I looked it up. Yeah, that was the, but that's, that's, comfortably over the majority, obviously, so. Well, it's great to be here. If you do want to, suffer with the pronunciation of my name in the future, it's Saganor, but no one gets it right. You were about as close as anyone's ever gonna get. It's a pretty unusual name. And, I am from the Community Preservation Coalition, which is a nonprofit in Boston. I'll tell you a little bit about our organization in a second. Mr. Chairman, if it's okay with you, I'd like to do the presentation interactively so that folks can ask questions along the way, and even the folks from the select board and the town officials who are here, anyone really, please feel free to just raise your hand and stop me at any time. There's a lot of information. It is a fairly long presentation, so it works better that way if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
All right, terrific. All right, so as I mentioned, our organization is a nonprofit based in Boston, but we're really just a combobulation of all these other nonprofits that work in the three areas of CPA, open space, affordable housing, and historic preservation. We've been handed around in terms of our physical presence. We're currently in the offices of the Trust for Public Land for the next year and a half until they move, and then we'll figure something else out. But we need to be in Boston, sort of close to the State House, because as you'll learn, that's a big part of what we do is work at the State House. We have a steering committee that runs the coalition, and there are actually 4 members from local CPCs on the steering committee, as well as folks from all these organizations as well, to sort of set the guidance and the budget and that sort of thing of the coalition. And the things we work on are typical of, I guess you would call it a municipal trade association. Every board and committee in town has an association that does the sort of things that we do as well. The select board has MMA, the Mass Municipal Association. Who's the conservation person? You have MACC, the Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commissions, that does work on behalf of conservation commissions. The historic folks have Preservation Massachusetts. So we're that organization for all the cities and towns that have the Community Preservation Act, and specifically the Community Preservation Committee, but really anyone can access our services if you're in a CPA community. And the things we do are typical of those organizations. We provide a lot of technical assistance. We probably handle about 4,000 emails or telephone calls a year. So if you have a question on CPA, and you can't find it on our website, you give us a call or shoot us an email and we'll help you out. I'll show you the website in a second. It is unfortunately, the only place on the internet where you're going to find anything about CPA. The state does not have any CPA department. There's not one person in the whole Commonwealth that has CPA in their job title. There's one page on the state's website that just lists the matching money, and that's it. People think we're a state agency all the time because there is no state department that handles CPA. They consider it to be a local program. So our website really has become the ultimate resource on CPA. You'll all receive our newsletter. If you're on the CPC and others that want to, just let us know. And we're coming out with our next edition probably next week as well. This is, I think, one of the best. Yes, go ahead, Lynn.
I mean, would you be able to put all the members on this board on your mailing list?
You
for
already out
newsletter?
there.
Okay,
Sabrina took care of that already.
okay, thank you.
So I didn't get to meet Sabrina today, but she was a huge help. You are very lucky to have a Sabrina in town, and she was a huge help to get this all put together. So when anyone sees her tomorrow, please let her know I really appreciated her help in getting it all going. She's terrific. I wish we could clone her and send her to the other 200 communities that have CPA. I think this is one of the best things that we do on behalf of communities, which is advocate on behalf of CPA at the State House. You're probably not going to, put on your boots and trudge to the State House and go meet with 200 legislators. And that's sort of the role we take on, advocating on behalf of the CPA communities for changes that would benefit the program. And unfortunately, sometimes we have to advocate against changes that folks are proposing that would not be good for the program. So we do a lot of that work, and that's why we really keep an office close to Beacon Hill. We help folks like Bill and Emma get CPA passed and answer their questions when they want to adopt. And then we do all webinars and trainings and things like that. I always let folks know how we support ourselves. That's always a popular question. We do it just like any other nonprofit by applying to foundations. We don't do any individual fundraising, so you're never going to get an email from us asking for a donation. But the way we fund about 80% of our budget is through membership dues that CPA communities pay voluntarily from their administrative budget. You don't have an administrative budget yet. You won't have one till FY27, so you don't have to worry about that. So take advantage of everything we have to offer. We're here to get you set up properly. And then at some point next year, we'll ask the CPC if they're interested in joining. We're very lucky that 99.9% of the communities feel that it's worth it. But it is voluntary. But don't worry about that now. We can talk about that next year. One thing I want to point out, everything going okay? We're good. All right. Excellent. One thing I want to point out is these numbers down the corner of these slides. We call these bookmarks. Tomorrow morning, the 6 or 7 of you are going to get copies of this presentation.
Already have it.
Oh, okay, but you're going to get another copy of it.
Okay.
But in that email from Chase Mack, our communications director, is going to be a link to these bookmarks to more information on what's on this page. So there's about 12 bookmarks in there. And so when you click through Chase's email, you'll be able to go to our get more information on the topic on this particular page. All right. So our website is communitypreservation.org. I hope a lot of you have, especially the ones on the CPC, have taken advantage of that resource. The page that's really dedicated to you is this one right here, the Technical Assistance Database. If you want to know anything about CPA, you hover over that, this big menu opens up, and there's really dozens and dozens of articles answering almost every question about CPA. And it's categorized, organized pretty nicely as well by the different categories of CPA and the popular topics. And if you still can't find the answer you're looking for, that's when you give us a call. But I would encourage all the members of the CPC to spend some time on this technical assistance page, at least reading the articles in your particular category that you represent on the CPC, because there's great information there. We're about to launch, don't get too attached to the design of this website. We're about to launch a brand new one. It looks great, but it's built on bubblegum and baling wire from about 15 years ago. Technology moves fast and we have to catch up. So we're about to, probably by the end of March, launch a brand new website. So it'll look a little different when you go there, but all the same information will be there. Any way you look at this program, you have joined a hugely successful program. I don't think any of us ever dreamed that there'd be 201 cities and towns in Massachusetts that would go into the voting booth and voluntarily vote themselves a tax increase. I mean, that's not an easy thing to accomplish. And yet we have communities in that 201 who have never even voted for an override. Have you ever done an override here?
We've held votes, yes.
Do they pass?
Lately?
No.
No, so nothing.
And that's pretty telling, because, a lot of the communities that have passed CPA have never had an override, ever. Like Chelsea, Boston has never had an override. Springfield, Pittsfield, Fall River, New Bedford, these are communities that are fairly blue collar and they've never had successful overrides or even anyone attempt it, but yet CPA passes. And I think the reason is, it's not asking for sort of more money to just go into the black hole of government. People don't really like to just send more money into their government institutions. They want to know exactly what they're going to get for it. And CPA being these 4 quality of life issues, open space, recreation, housing, and historic, people will start to see pretty quickly tangible results, nice parks that they can go to, places where their children can afford to live in town and buy affordable housing, and fixing up beautiful historic buildings. By the way, this is a spectacular town hall. This is one of the nicest town halls I've ever had the pleasure. And your sugar daddy's never arrived.
But it's courtesy of an override, right?
Yeah.
We would never,
We wouldn't get an override.
to restore this building?
You think we're gonna get a?
The restoration, the original restoration. This building.
Oh, when they did it 20 years ago?
Yeah, that was probably done with an override, right?
I just remember it being vacated.
Oh, really? It was
A
empty?
debt exclusion, I believe.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh,
That
Veronica,
is-
better memory than me, thank you.
A debt exclusion is just another form of override, right? It is follows the same override, formula.
I think
So,
that seat's open,
so that's it.
to answer your question.
Terrific that you were able to invest in
We're
that,
glad to see
but
you.
things will come up, right? Yeah. Well, we'll talk about that. The 201 communities represent well over half the state now. And this is the stat I love to promote. I don't know if I'll be able to say that forever. I've been at the coalition for 20 years. CPA has been around for 26 now, and we've never had a community exit the program. And communities can do that at any time. They can lower their surcharge, they can raise it, they can change their exemptions, and they can leave the program. And yet, 26 years later, not one community has ever been unhappy with the program enough to leave it. So I think that says something about how terrific the program is and how much I think you're going to find that it really benefits your community. This is definitely my favorite map of Massachusetts, the one that shows all the CPA communities. The ones in green are towns, the orange are the cities, and then the 5 that have stars are the newest 5 communities since November of 24, and you're one of them. And so we've been traveling around training each of these communities. We've actually been, everyone except for Egremont will be going, Sheffield. We've been to Egremont. We'll be going to train their new CPC in a couple weeks. And then the class of 24, 25 will all be underway and ready to go. So you're kind of on a parallel track with these towns here. That adopted CPA around the same time that you did at those stars on the website. Oops, sorry about that. Any way you look at this program, you see the success of it. So you can look at that map and you see all the green and orange on that map, but then you can actually look at what the money has actually bought. What have folks done with this program? And the first thing that I think will jump out at people is the total amount of money raised in 26 years. It's $3.7 billion. We didn't have an easy way to track a lot of this data as DOR built up a database when CPA first came out, and it took them a while to catch up. And when that figure first came out, it was like well over $1.5 billion. It was the first time we actually saw the impact, and we were all really blown away about how huge the impact of the program has been. Every year it generates over $300 million across the Commonwealth for those 4 quality issues. And it's added up to 18,000 different projects that have been approved at various town meetings, and city councils across the state. And the statistics are pretty impressive. The different types of projects, are huge in variety. It's unbelievable. Every day I get a call and I'm like, no one's ever done that with CPA funds. That's a really interesting idea. Yes, you can do that. Or maybe no, you can't. But the variety of projects has been terrific. And we'll talk about these different categories as we move along tonight. All right, so let's dig into the money piece first. Always got to start with the money, right? So your CPA program actually has 2 revenue sources. So the first revenue source is your local property tax surcharge, that was approved at the ballot. And you have 1%, right? 1% property surcharge with some exemptions that come in first to play in that. So that will bring in somewhere around $167,000 or so in a given year. And that'll go up incrementally every single year. CPA is a surcharge on top of your taxes. Taxes usually go up. I think I've only seen 1 or 2 communities in the entire history where their CPA surcharge has gone down year to year. But taxes usually go up slightly, and that means your CPA revenue will go up slightly every year along with the tax base of the town. And then there's a second funding source, which is annual distributions from the state of Massachusetts Community Preservation Trust Fund. And it is a true trust fund. It is funded by not the general fund of the Commonwealth, but it is funded by a dedicated fee just for CPA. Anytime you go to a registry of deeds in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and you hand them a document that you want recorded, whether it be a deed or a mortgage or an order of conditions from the CONSCOM, a declaration of trust for your estate plan, anything you want recorded at the registry, there's a fee for that. And you pay it at the window. Most of that money goes to the state's general fund, but $50 of every document that's recorded at the registry goes to the CPA trust fund. And it is truly a trust fund. The money's collected at the registry, it's sent to the Department of Revenue, and the only thing DOR can do with that money is pay it out as a match to the 201 CPA communities every November 15th. They can't use it for any other purpose. It would take a major change in the law to divert that money to anything else. It's never happened, and we now have CPA in almost every Senate and House district in the state. The trust fund is about as safe as you're going to get for money. And so you will get a match every November 15th. It will vary, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Sometimes it'll be dip, and sometimes it'll be more, depending upon how much real estate activity there is at the Registry of Deeds. The third funding source is interest. This money, you started collecting your CPA surcharge July 1st. You haven't spent anything yet. That money is sitting in the town's coffers. It's invested along with the town's general free cash and stabilization fund and all the other money the town has. And they're required to track how much of that money how much of the interest earned on that money is attributable to the CPA portion. So every year when the town closes the books, you should get a small interest payment from your share of the town's interest that it earned on all its invested money over the course of the year. And that's a form that they have to submit to DOR, and it's called the CP2, and hopefully you'll get a copy of that every summer. And you check to see, but usually they're pretty good about making sure that interest is distributed. We did have a couple communities that found that didn't keep track of it or just didn't make sure it was happening, and it wasn't happening. So it's a good thing to check the CP2 form when the town files at the end of the summer. Yeah.
Regarding the annual trust fund distribution, could you explain that again? So the town matches funds, is that what I understand?
No, the town collects your local funds for CPA.
Okay,
And that'll add up to about $167,000.
I see.
So at the end of the year,
Mhm.
your municipal officials will be asked by DOR to submit a form that's the CP1 form. And basically all that DOR is looking to find out is how much did you collect in CPA last fiscal year? So over the summer, when the town's closing the books, they'll automatically submit that form to DOR and they'll say, we collected $166,925.37. That's how much actually came in for our CPA surcharge. And then DOR takes the local surcharge reports from every community and applies a formula to that and pays out matching money to you on November 15th. So you always are getting matched on the previous year's collections because they have to know how much you collected. So this year, FY26, you didn't get any matching money. You don't get any matching money in your first year of CPA. This summer, when the town closes the books on FY26, they'll tell DOR how much money they got and you'll get your matching money. It's not a 1-for-1 match, unfortunately, but you'll get a distribution from the trust fund. Your first distribution will be on November 15th.
Do you have an idea what that percentage is?
We will have a really good idea in about a week when DOR puts out their projection, but it's looking right now to be about a 15% match. So when we talk about percentages, we talk about a percentage of what you raised locally. So you'll get a check for around
Like 24,000.
Yeah, something like that. 15% of what, and it varies, and we're going to talk about that next, actually. But those are your three funding sources. All right, so let's talk about the trust fund, because that's kind of the magic of CPA, this matching money. Regular overrides or debt exclusions don't come with a match from the state, so CPA is kind of cool in that respect. You know, you did raise your taxes, but you're getting something back for it in terms of matching money. Unfortunately, we're at a little bit of a low point with the trust fund right now. Last year's match was about 16.9%. We'll see what DOR says when they come out with their projection, and you will get a copy of that in your email from us as soon as DOR announces it. But we think they're going to announce somewhere around 15 or 15.5%. So it'll be a little less than last year. And like we said, that will be paid to you in November. And it'll be revenue to FY27. It'll be, you declare the revenue when you actually physically get the check. So it'll be based on what you collected in FY26, but it's revenue to your program for FY27. So this is low. You know, when CPA first started in 2000, there were only 37 communities in the program. They were very small. The real estate market was going bonkers then. You know, it was the day when people would buy homes and fix them up and flip them quickly, and interest rates are falling, and you refinance 2 or 3 times a year. All those refinancings generated a ton of activity at the registry. And for the first 6 years with CPA, communities got 100% match. So if they raised 167, they got a check for 167. Wow. No one ever imagined that it would be that way. It just so happens that when the program started, the real estate market was doing really well, and the first communities that joined, there were fewer and they were really small. So I think Groton was in one of the initial groups of folks very, very early on. They've had it for a long, long, long time. But it took a little while to filter out this way, you know. So we would like to see, you know, at least, let's say, a 30% match or so. We think that is a really comfortable matching amount of money to keep everyone happy in the program. I think the program has grown way too large it would take an unbelievable amount of money to do 100% match anymore. I think those are times, you know, those were times when the real estate market was quite different. You know, if you know anything about the real estate market, there's not a lot of homes on the market right now. You know, interest rates have dropped a little bit, but they're still pretty steady, and no one's refinancing very much. So it's not a great, you know, the clerks at the Registry of Deeds are probably a little bored. Well, not a lot of people coming in to record mortgages and deeds and mortgage discharge, et cetera. And that's not good for us, because that doesn't mean you're generating volume at the registry. Yeah.
The money that you do collect, that has to go out by November. They don't like keep the money if there's a leftover.
Nope.
Each year it goes to zero.
Yeah. Well, no, it doesn't go to zero. I can explain the trust fund formula if you want.
Okay, I mean, that's fine. I just wanted to know, there is a little cushion there.
Yeah, we do have an article on our website that actually steps through the trust fund formula.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, since when they wrote the CPA legislation in 2000, they didn't know how many communities would adopt it. They didn't know how many 1% communities there were, how many 2%, how many 3%, how many had the exemption for 100,000, how many didn't. You know, they had to write a formula that would make sure that it didn't run out of money. So there's always a little bit of a carry forward, but it stays in the CPA trust fund and continues to earn interest the whole following year. And then it forms the opening balance the following year. So they pay out, you know, probably close to 95% of what's in the trust fund. And then there's a little bit of that cushion stays in the trust fund for the following year. But it's not a use it or lose it situation. You know, if you're the DPW and you have a budget in Townsend and you get to June 30th and you have $10,000 left in your budget, you know, that goes back. That goes back into the town's free cash or stabilization or whatever. And you start with a new budget from town meeting. CPA is different. The CPA money in the trust fund and your local account stays in your account at the end of the year. It does not go to the general fund in either case.
And I assume then it rolls over to the next year.
Yes, exactly. Yep, it stays right in the trust fund still, and they earn interest at the trust fund level too. So that's a little bit more interest because now you're talking millions of dollars that are earning interest. So, and that's paid back into the fund as well. All right, any questions on the rest of the trust fund before we get into sort of what you guys do or what you will be doing? All right. The Community Preservation Committee has a number of responsibilities that are in the statute. And there are startup, procedures that you need to do, and then there are ongoing procedures. So those are the next few slides of what we have to talk about. So the first steps that you're going to be working on over the coming months are to assess the community preservation needs of your community. And you're doing that so you can come up with a CPA plan. That's the end goal. Now, you don't have to create this plan from scratch. You're all volunteers. You don't have a ton of time. The town doesn't have, a 50-person planning department that can write your plan for you. So there have been 200 different CPA plans written before you, or maybe 195. We have some of the great ones on our website. People sort of beg, borrow, and steal. There's no new ideas at this point. So, feel free to explore the CPA plans we have on our website. And in addition, you're pulling information from all the other plans the town has. Does the town have an active master plan? Even an expired master plan would be good.
Yes.
An open space and recreation plan? Town does not have one of those.
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay, was there an old one that might have expired? No.
Can I jump in here?
Yeah,
We do have an open space and this is Veronica Kell. We do have an open space and recreation plan.
Great.
It was developed about a year ago. Carol Hofsties was the chair of the committee and I was on the committee.
Great. So it's a fresh one too. It doesn't expire for 7 years, I think you get.
I think that's correct.
That's terrific. Okay. So that, in your analysis, you're going to gather up these plans. You don't have to think of every need of the town. A lot of the needs are going to be identified, like Veronica talked about, in this open space plan. If you want to know what things were uncovered as priorities for, open space protection or what recreational opportunities, it's probably in that plan. The town probably does not have a housing plan. Veronica, you want to weigh in on that?
Yes, we do have a housing production plan. Laurie can speak to that. We also have a 5-year affordable housing plan in place.
Awesome.
If, just for the reference by the board, if you just go to the Townsend Mass website and do a search on open space and recreation plan.
Go right up. That's great. And so, kudos to you guys for having an affordable housing plan as well, because a lot of most small suburban towns haven't really thought ahead and put the time in to do that. So you've got a good base of work that's been done before you for the town, right? So you're not reinventing the wheel on these priorities. These plans will give you a good idea of what some of the priorities are for the town. So you'll review those plans. The law does require you to meet with all the other committees and boards in town and find out what their priorities are. Now that meeting can happen a number of different ways. It just says you have to meet with them. It doesn't say how. So, Some CPCs send each person that represents that board back. So you go back to the CONSCOM, you get an agenda item on CPC priority discussion. 20 minutes, the CONSCOM talks about things they would see like to happen with the money, and you bring that information back to the CPC. And the same person does that for the housing and that sort of thing, and the historic commission. That's one way to do it. You could invite individual boards to come have a joint meeting with you, come to your meeting, and have, 2 or 3 every month come and talk to you, or you can go to their meeting. You can have a couple people say, hey, the 2 of us will go to the CONSCOM meeting, the 2 of us will go to the historic commission meeting, we'll get on their agenda and we'll talk to them and we'll take notes. Any way you want to do it is up to you folks to decide as a CPC, but you do have to get the input from the other committees and boards. And then you also have to hold a public hearing as well. So public hearing is different from a public meeting, right? Public meeting is what we're having right now. But a public hearing has to be advertised in the newspaper in each of 2 weeks before that hearing. And anyone that comes, you have to let them talk and give information to you. So typically these aren't hugely attended, but it is required by the law to have a public hearing to get input from the public on what they would like to see CPA do. Typically, CPCs will schedule that on the same night they have a regular meeting, so that if only 2 people show up and after 10 minutes you're done, you close the public hearing and you open up your regular meeting, so that you're not all just coming in just for a short public hearing. But that's required as well. And then in the end, you take all that input and you prepare a community preservation plan. And then you have to come up with an application, asking for information when people want to apply for funds, and some guidelines about how you're going to determine which types of projects you're going to fund. Again, we have a page on our website with examples of these from communities. We don't have all of them up there. We have the best ones up there. So feel free to beg, borrow, and steal all these documents from our website. And I'm guessing that's where the bookmark on this page sends you right to the page that shows you all the CPA plans. Yeah.
I'd just like to say that for the planning board, it's probably 5 or 6 years ago, I forget, it goes back, but we had a public hearing. We probably had, I should say a public event, not just a public hearing, but a public event. We probably had 60 town residents.
That's awesome.
Come to it. And what we did was we sort of split into like 6 groups, and each group sort of
had a topic.
No, they basically said, what would you like to see from a planning standpoint for the future of our town? And then we had a spokesperson for each group, and a lot of it was the same, and a lot of it was affordable housing for the elderly. And that was very, very important to us in terms of focusing us on what we wanted to do in the planning board for the future. And MRPC was very, very helpful in helping us with that.
That's terrific. And
I thought something like that would be really great if we could get a lot of the town to, or folks in the town to show up to basically contribute to where they would like to see CPC projects in this town, to go.
And a lot of communities do that. I think there's actually a term for those. I think they're called charrettes. Have you ever heard that term?
Where is it?
Charrette.
Correct.
Charrette. ARETTE, I think.
Sure.
It's where you bring people together to brainstorm and break them into little groups, and you have the whiteboards and you spitball ideas and put them up on the board. It's a great idea, and food always attracts people. So, serve food, and you can charge that to your administrative budget when you have it in FY27. You won't have an administrative budget for this year. But that's a terrific way to do it.
So Lori, were you on the planning board when we had the public event where everyone came up and we, all met? And they came up with ideas for planning in the future? I don't know if you were on the board then.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought that was very useful. I'd love to see something like that.
Lance, I was also there. Lori was there, you were there, I was there, a whole bunch of people. It was really a great time.
Yeah.
It was really it was housing. It was determined for housing. I do have the report, and if it's missing from everybody's filing cabinet, I'll send it out to you.
Oh, the results of that. Yeah, that would be very helpful to them.
We did one for housing, but we did one for economic development as well. We did that last year, the June 14th meeting at the senior center.
Yeah.
That
How many
was-
people are?
It was all 5 of us.
Yeah, very participatory though, that table. But, the one, I think that Cindy's referring, it was the one that we did for housing, and MRPC did it, and we actually did it in Memorial Hall.
Okay,
And
yeah.
we had the round tables.
Yeah, I thought that was very useful
That
in
was.
terms of, and I'd like to see
It was very
see the
interactive.
same thing with CPC.
Yeah, you could do something like that. I think-
Lance,
I think-
Yes,
there was also one done for the master plan. We had a charrette
Yep.
at Town Hall and also at the senior center.
Yeah, that's true.
In about the time frame that you're talking about. I was on the planning board then. It was 2018, 2019 timeframe.
memory's not what it used to be.
But you remembered it though, that's the key thing.
Yeah.
And it was helpful. So there you go. There's something to emulate. So.
Well, it's good to get town input.
Yeah, absolutely. And the CPA law requires you to do
Yeah.
it, to do these things. So, how long does this take? It's up to you. You know, I've seen communities work on all these steps and sort of, take a full year before they start accepting applications and spending money and really make sure their program is really up to speed and has good procedures and good applications and good guidelines and a good idea of what the community wants to see. I've had other communities that sort of race through this because they have a big priority they want to bring to town meeting. It's really completely up to you as to how much time you spend setting yourself up and studying this, you know, studying the needs of the towns. So there's no right or wrong answer to the time frame for that. All right, so applications, the CPA legislation actually does not require applications. It actually says nothing about that. It says it starts at the point where the CPC makes recommendations on projects, but every community does use applications. It seems like the fairest way to weigh all the different competing needs for the money. You will get more applications than you have money to spend, and you'll have to sort of work through that. So one type of application that's become very popular, which we have samples at that bookmark on the website, is what's called a two-step application. And the first step is just one page, very simple, tell us your idea. And the whole point of that is just for the CPC to examine that idea and determine whether it's legal to fund with CPA. CPA is pretty complicated. It has these 4 categories, but as you'll see in a little bit, it can't fund everything in each of those categories. And the last thing you want to have happen is someone puts a ton of effort into an application and they, you know, make 7 copies of a, 29-page application. They have letters of support, they have budgets, they have all the things that you want to see in an application. And they turn it in after working on it for a month and a half, and you tell them, we can't fund this, it's not eligible for funding. And that's not good, right? You don't want to waste someone's time, but even worse, then they, gnashing of teeth starts, they go running to the select board and say, I thought this was what CPA was for, and politics happen, and shouting and yelling and that sort of thing. So Tisbury, I think, was the town that created this 2-step application, and it really works well. And then when you determine, you look at these preliminary step 1 applications, you determine which ones are legal, you get back to the applicant and say, you are now invited to submit a full application, and here's what we want to see in the full application. And maybe a month later, you have the deadline for the full application. Yeah, Robert.
How early or how soon do you do a preliminary one?
Great question. So the typical cycle for most CPCs, although there are exceptions, you don't regularly have a scheduled fall town meeting, do you? You have special town meetings when necessary? You don't?
But
Yeah.
we usually have
A fall and
3
spring?
meetings a year.
Oh, or
Maybe
winter.
Special,
Okay.
and then,
And some people have a scheduled fall town meeting, like almost like a section annual. You don't do that. You just call it as needed. Yeah. So that, we do have some communities. Well, let me tell you the typical cycle. The typical cycle when a community only has their annual town meeting, is you start accepting step one applications maybe in September 15th. And then the full application may be due October 15th or October 31st. And that gives you a good 3 to 4 months to really do your proper due diligence on all your applications, to invite the applicant in to talk to you, to refine the application, to get it, ready for prime time, to ask questions, to do any work that needs to be done to get it ready for town meeting, because your deadline for town meeting, you're asking for, placeholders for the warrants, already.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right. So the last thing you want to do is set your application deadline for January 15th and leave yourself, 45 days to vet all the applications, meet with people, take your votes. And that's where mistakes happen, when you try to do it that quickly. So that's a typical process. We do have a couple communities that have regularly scheduled fall town meetings. Rockport is one example. They always have a town meeting the first Saturday in September. And they do all their CPA projects then. So they back up their cycle to end at fall town meeting. But you have to be sure you're gonna have a fall town meeting to do that. If yours is not regularly scheduled, I wouldn't recommend doing it.
don't we?
We have one, but we never know the date.
Right.
Some years it's until January.
Yeah.
Some years
Yeah.
we have it in,
Yeah, it
not
really
in our charter or
and
bylaws.
it has to be for CPA purposes before the tax rate is set. And you set your tax rate in late November, early December, right? Yeah, so I would recommend your annual town meeting. So whether you're ready for this September, maybe you will be. If you're not, that's fine. The money will continue to accrue and you'll start next September.
All right, I need to be a little more clear
Yep.
on that procedure. So we do a preliminary application,
Mm-hmm.
and assuming that's reviewed, then we prepare a full application,
Right.
and that's submitted to your people.
No, to you. The
This is coming to us.
Yeah, these are
People
all,
applying.
these are all to come to your committee. The coalition
Oh, I
has
see.
no role in your
Okay.
local project.
And then we present that to town meeting?
Correct.
Okay.
After I looked at
Approved,
Pepperell's.
Stuart, could I have a question?
Hang on 1 second. We'll get to you right after this young lady is done talking.
Pepperell has, they have the two-step, they have the preliminary, determine if, when someone
Legal.
comes to their CPC, they first determine if it's even eligible for funds. And then they have the person do a full application. And then they have like a rubric, like a grading,
A
scoring system,
rubric, yeah.
so that it's fair.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yep. And we have 3 different examples of scoring systems on our
Yeah.
website.
You have that.
You don't have to use one of those, but it can be very helpful. But all that information is coming to you. You're the ones preparing the blank application and asking the questions. And the people are submitting it all to you, and it's your committee that's doing the deliberation over the winter.
Mm.
And then you're making your final votes to assign which projects you're gonna spend which amount of money on, and you make those recommendations to town meeting.
So, I'm just trying to get a clear picture
Yeah.
here.
Yeah,
So, a preliminary idea is submitted to our group,
yep,
and then we review that for its legal content,
correct.
and then from
And you can
there,
call us if you need help with it.
okay,
Or
And
you could
then-
ask your town council for help on it too, if you
All
need
right.
it. Most of
so
them are
at
pretty
that
obvious.
point, then this committee prepares a full application?
No, you ask,
We receive it and review it.
yep, you get back to the applicant and say, we've determined your project is legal. We're inviting you to submit a full application. Here's all the questions on the full application. Please get that to us by November 1st.
All right, question. Can members of our own committee submit a preliminary
You
application?
certainly could. It's not that common. Normally it comes from outside the committee.
Mhm.
But there's nothing in the legislation that prohibits you from doing that. I was chair of my committee for a while, and the first 5 years, we didn't get any housing applications. And so we did one of those charrettes to get the people's needs on housing. And, we didn't have a housing organization in town. We didn't have a community development corporation. We didn't have a housing trust or a housing partnership. And so the CPC put forward an initiative to town meeting on our own. It's not that common. It's better if applications come from the outside, but there's no reason you can't. If you if you've uncovered when you were doing that preliminary plan, you know, all that planning, if you've uncovered a really strong need and no one has applied for it, you know, you could, submit it yourself, absolutely.
Okay, so the full application comes to our group
Correct?
and we review it, modify it, or
You can
approve
do
it?
all, you can do anything you want with it. The CPC is in complete control of that. Normally, you invite the applicants to come in and meet with you, and you ask questions and do a presentation. You might ask for more information.
Put limitations on it?
You can put limitations on it. You can adjust the money up. You know, if you feel like, hey, did you think about this? You know, maybe we think you should ask for $10,000 more and include, you know, backstops in that baseball field you're designing. And
So-
you can ask, you can send it out for comment to consultants if you need, if it's a historic application and you want to make sure it's done to proper historic standards and you want to send it out to a consultant to review, you can do that. You can go to some of the other boards and committees in town if you feel like you need their advice. That's why it takes a long time. We suggest you leave a long time for that due diligence process.
Okay.
What's
So,
the typical time for that process?
Usually you get the applications, let's say in November, and then when are you asking for placeholders for the warrant? February? March 1st, yeah. So you have, 3-4 months in there.
Okay.
You get the holidays in the middle of it too, you know, so not much gets done then. That's a typical time frame.
so we would review, modify, and approve a project.
Correct, and you take a vote at your meeting, so when you're finally ready to go, and you know you have $167,000 to spend, and you have identified 5 projects that will total $167,000, someone makes a motion at the meeting, you know, I move to fund the recreation application as submitted by the rec committee for $37,000 from the, you know, and you mentioned the name of the account.
So in order to do that properly, the applicant would submit cost projections?
Yes, you'll see when you look at the application samples we have, you'll see most of them ask for a budget, and it's really critical to ask for a budget. It's not gonna be perfect, Robert, you know, it's early in the process.
Right.
But you can't just have someone give a wild guess and stand in front of town meeting and say, yeah, someone said it might cost this, you know?
Right. So then, at that time, assume, it's all been approved and reviewed and, we present that at a town meeting to transfer funds from the town's funds to that project.
To that project, right. Well, first you have to send the warrant articles to the select board because they have to put it on the warrant.
Right.
So you submit your warrant articles to them. And then, at town meeting, sometimes CPCs move the articles themselves. Sometimes, the applicants move their own articles. Sometimes it's a combination. You guys can decide how you want to do it yourselves. But town meeting gets the final determination. They have to vote to approve the appropriation. So we had a question from someone on the Zoom. Hello, voice in the sky. Yes.
I think you may have answered the question. The CPA committee will be aiming for the April annual town meeting. Therefore, applications will be starting this fall, correct?
Well, that's up to the CPC to decide.
We still need to set our policy.
Yes, they still need to do a lot of preliminary steps to get to that point, so they may not be ready to do applications this September. So that's to be determined. That's something the CPC will have to decide.
Thank you.
All right, Lynn.
Can you have projects that span 2 fiscal years?
Yes and no. You have to appropriate the money at town meeting from money that you have in the bank already, or next year's money. You could say, we're giving you 100,000 and we're appropriating 100,000. You can spend 50,000 this year and 50,000 next year. But you can't promise that 50,000 is coming from this year's budget and another 50,000 is coming from next year's budget. because that's a different town meeting. There might be different people on the CPC. You can't bind a future CPC.
Okay, so your maximum amount for a project is limited to your annual budget.
Your annual budget for that year, the next year's annual budget, just like town meeting appropriates
Yeah.
for the next year, and any money you have saved up.
Okay,
And we're gonna talk a little bit more about that in a minute.
okay.
I think, was it Lori?
Valerie,
Valerie, okay,
just to clarify, the warrant's already closed for this year's income.
right. They're not gonna do any projects this year, but.
Not even that part about, that base fund for administrative expenses. Already closed.
So Sabrina had said that she
Is there a
forwarded,
placeholder?
yeah,
Oh, there-
a placeholder.
There's a placeholder.
There is placeholder, okay.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
just looking- Okay.
yeah, hopefully there
We
is.
need to vote on it
I-
tonight.
Because that-
Find the place. Let me see if I can find the place.
I just sent
Yeah.
earlier last week, a
Okay,
placeholder without numbers on it
yeah.
to Sabrina.
Let me-
And then on Friday, I sent her a placeholder with the actual numbers that hopefully the CPC will vote on
Just
tonight.
find it in the,
So,
yeah,
good,
come on.
yes.
I can envision in a given year, we might have 4, 5, 6 applications.
That sounds about right. Yep,
And so this committee would make recommendations on all or one of them,
it's up to you.
and our percentages of them,
Yep.
just to clarify that.
Yeah, you might get $400,000 worth of applications and you only have 200,000 to spend from
Right.
that year and some leftover money.
Hmm.
And you're gonna have to make those decisions, and that's why it's good to have your plan identifying priorities, because you could say, hey, this is a great project, but it's not a top priority,
I
So,
have a question. So during that, between step 1 and 2,
yeah,
that would be the time to say, hey, look, you want to build whatever in town and you're asking for 100,000, we're going to approve 50. Now, would they have to revise their application and then we'd bring it to the select board?
no, you wouldn't do that between these two, you'd do it after you receive the full application.
Right.
Because step 1, usually most people don't ask for even a
It's
price.
just an idea.
Yeah, it's just the
Okay.
idea to determine whether it's
But
legal.
we can, I mean, it's common, or I should say, is it common that you get a request, but you kind of dumb it down and say, that
Absolutely.
seems like a lot, we'll give you half?
It depends. You might one year get not a lot of applications and you can fund everyone what they're asking for. You might get a year where, you have to turn 2 people away completely, and fund 2 more at 50% of what they asked for and fund 2 at the full amount based on which you determine were priorities. So that depends every year and that's completely up to the CPC on the recommendation.
Well, it would seem to do that effectively, you'd have to have a deadline for the applications to be in. So the committee could determine the priority ones
Absolutely.
and, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm suggesting that, a lot of CPCs have this deadline in September and this deadline in end of October, middle of November, something like
Okay.
that. But it's up to you. Like I said, Rockport does it differently because they shoot for, September instead of April or May. When's your town meeting? May?
Okay.
May, yeah.
And I presume that if you have like a $200,000 budget, you only put on the warrant, like one project or some of the projects add up to 200. You don't let the town decide
No.
between 3
No.
projects.
No. You have to present a balanced budget,
Okay.
just like the town does.
Okay.
Yeah, that could be a mess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point.
If we have something, like say this September, we get something and we only get, say, 2, and we can afford it because we have it. And they're good, they've been discussed for a long time and they're like, we really need the money
Yeah.
as soon as possible. Could, even though we have it saying November 15th, could we close it earlier if we just got preliminary came September 15th? We only have 2, we like those 2. Could we vote on it and say yes, and then there's a town meeting that comes up really quick that we have the money and to really
Sure, you
move
could-
it faster
Yep,
if
it's
it can be?
completely, it's completely up to you.
Do we have to write that in the plan to say?
Yes, you do have to be
If
fair to
something-
everyone, you know, the guidelines that go with the application
I
and the
think so, what
plan
to
would,
expect, right?
Right.
would do that.
But if you're saying September 15th, you have to give us your preliminary and we get it and then we say, that's good. They give us the next week, here's the full one. And they're like, we really want to go.
Yeah.
And because of things, I want to do it before the snow hits. So can we
It's up
vote? We got
to
a
you.
meeting October.
It's
Let's
up
get
to
it in
you. I mean, I think you need to be careful with that because you
Could upset.
promised everyone else,
Yeah.
you know,
Right.
that you're.
But I mean, September 15th is the deadline. So if everybody gave us their.
Yeah, normally you have to submit a step one to be invited to submit a step two.
Right.
So you already kind of know what's coming down the pipe.
Right.
I'm just saying for, if we have
I
time
would
to
think
think.
that you would probably want step one earlier
You could.
and then, so that you have time for everybody to complete the application.
Yeah, most folks find that getting attention of folks during the summer, particularly August, is a tough time to, you know, you put a deadline in August or the end of July or something, I think you're gonna find that a lot of people aren't quite thinking about, you know, the following year's town meeting at that point. But you could do it. You certainly could. It depends. And we do have, you know, priorities come up. You know, for example, land purchases for open space often, you know, don't follow this neat schedule. And so most applications, you'll see it, you know, say the CPC reserves the right to, you know, for these reasons to accept applications out of cycle, you know, and a land purchase is usually a good example.
Right,
And
it's right of
they might be
first
having a
refusal.
town meeting, you know, on
Or you
December
might be-
1st, and, you know, you want to move on the land purchase quickly because the guy says I have to close by the end of the year, or else I'm selling it to a developer.
So how would you do that if the money has to be approved at town meeting?
Well, I was saying that in that example, they're having a special town meeting on December 1st. So you can put things on special town meeting too. But I'd be very clear in your application of what are the circumstances that would cause you to accept an out of cycle application.
So it all goes back to step one, where they need a plan.
Yes,
They have to approve
The
one of the
CPC.
plans for this CPA and how it's going to operate.
yes.
And that's what you said, you had like 200 examples.
Example
Yeah.
plans, yeah.
Okay, for them to look at. So that's really, that's gonna be, once you approve your plan, does their plan get approved by anybody else?
Nope, it's not like a master plan that has to go to town meeting. It's just, it's their guide.
The select board.
Nope, does not have to go to the select
Okay,
board.
so your plan that you then vote on and you put out to the town and all the departments, and they have to follow your plan.
Yeah, but, you know, there should be some wiggle room there too, right? Because they
Yeah,
can't know
but
everything.
their plan's gonna say where the wiggle room is.
Yes, exactly.
You know, you can't approve a plan, put it out to everybody, and then change your mind.
Right.
Okay.
All right, and this will be a little clearer when you actually read some plans, you know, and see what applications look like on the website. So those are sort of the setup requirements to come up with a, you know, do all those exploratory things, come up with a CPA plan, an application, guidelines, maybe a scoring rubric, et cetera. Yep.
I have a quick question about the plan. Kind of going back to the, putting up the guidelines in the plan. What happens? I mean, you try and plan for every contingency and wiggle room. What happens if you see something, you're like, well, I'd like to amend the plan. Can you amend it for the following year? Or, I mean, is it, you know?
Absolutely, and actually, this is the perfect time to ask that question. Very good, because you are required to update the plan every year.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So,
That makes sense.
this-
So we'll
this-
learn as we go.
yeah, so this is your that was the setup requirements for the first year. Now your ongoing requirements. You do
But just
update the
once a
plan.
year, you wouldn't do a, mid-year, like, oh, we forgot to include this, we need to add it to
Yeah.
our plan.
I mean, you could, it's, again, it's
it's
your plan.
not
you're the
a-
only one that has
Oh, we
to
just have
approve
to
it.
have a public hearing.
Yeah, and you do have to have that public hearing every year, because needs change, right? You might fix up one park and someone says, hey, you fixed up the park on the north side of town. You know, now we've got a chance to look how beautiful that is, come fix up the south park, you know? And you're also gonna wanna, as an ongoing basis, review, what the money coming in and what your account balances are and things like that. You don't have a fiduciary responsibility. You're not the one actually writing out the checks and taking in the tax revenue. But the town has reports they put out. And, the DPW gets a report of what his budget looks like and what his finances are once a month or whatever it is. You should get that same report from the town on what the CPA accounts look like. And you want to keep track of those because they can get kind of complicated. And if things get charged to the wrong account, you want to make sure you catch that in time. So you want to constantly be reviewing the CPA account balances and the spending. And then these last two things are the real meat and potatoes of what the CPC does. You present a budget every year to town meeting, and you make recommendations on projects. When it all comes down to it, these are really your two core functions. All right, so let's dig into those. The budget. Yeah.
Clarify, it is on the annual town meeting.
Okay, the place, and hopefully by the end of tonight, it will be set in stone.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
That just threw me off the last thing you said. We make project recommendations.
Yes.
Aren't we deciding the ones we want? Are we recommending them to the select board, or are we saying these will be our project? Is that what you mean by
A
recommendation?
recommendation is you have voted to approve the project and assigned an amount of money to it. But that's just a recommendation. So I move to recommend to town meeting that we do the park project as outlined in the application in front of us for $67,000 from the recreation reserve account. All in favor? Yes. That's
Town
Yeah,
meeting.
that-
Only town meeting can appropriate the funds.
Ah, I missed that. Okay, thank you.
So you do have to send the recommendations to the select board, but they have to put them on.
But
the
it's the town meeting when
The
it.
town meeting that then makes,
Okay.
town meeting makes the actual appropriation. So it's a back and forth thing. Town meeting can't appropriate any money for a CPA project unless you have recommended it first. On the other hand, you can't spend any money. Town meeting is the one who makes the final decision on appropriation. So it's kind of a checks and balances.
I have a question, like,
Yeah.
has anyone ever at the town meeting, like, voted against it, like a large majority? And like, what happens, what do you do if that occurs?
Yeah, so it is interesting. And
Especially in our
we've never done the actual research, but anecdotally, I'll tell you that CPA articles passed at a much higher clip than regular town meeting articles. Part of it is the fact that the money's usually already been collected, right? So it's not raising taxes where if, they're asking to buy a new fire truck for $500,000, that might have some financial impact. And the other thing is they're sort of quality of life issues, right? They're things that people usually get pretty excited about, for the community. So they do pass at a much higher clip, but there definitely are projects that get turned down by town meeting. And that money just stays in the CPA account, and next year you recommend, a new use for that money.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so now let's go to the budget. So most communities, do their budget on the same cycle we just talked about for projects, and both the budget and your project recommendations go to the spring town meeting. It does require you to vote to recommend a budget. So every year you're recommending definitely a budget, and that's what you're gonna do this year, because you don't have any projects. But most years you'll be recommending a budget by taking a vote at your meeting, and you'll be recommending the projects as well, both in time to get the information to the select board to put on the warrant. So in preparing a budget, you have to first get the top line number, right? So we're talking about next year's budget. So right now we're talking about the FY27 budget, right? We're in FY26, but town meeting is voting to spend money from the FY27 budget this spring, right? All that money you're spending at town meeting is actually coming from next year's revenue. Same thing with CPA. You got to prepare an FY27 budget right now. And to do that, you have to start with the top line number. So you need to know what you think the town will collect from the local surcharge money next year, starting July 1st, and what that matching money will be from the state on November 15th. Now, both of these are hard to do in your first year because you don't have much of a track record, right? You've never received a match. And this is your first year of CPA, but it's not even over yet. They're still collecting taxes. But you have a crack financial staff here in the town of Townsend, and Sabrina and I worked with them to come up with these estimates, for the budget for this year. So the nice thing about CPA is the legislation says very little dictating on how you have to spend the money. But it does have one basic cardinal rule about CPA. Out of all the money you expect to receive for next year, so out of your 167,000, actually you're going to expect more because you're going to get your state match. But out of the money you expect to receive in a given fiscal year, you have to set aside or reserve for later spending 10% for housing projects, 10% for open space and recreation, and 10% for historic.
Is that mandatory?
What's that? That is mandatory. That's the only piece that's mandatory. So you might not get projects in all three categories that year, and that's fine. You will have reserve accounts that will be set up, each of those three. And it's the best practice to just every year take 10% of your revenue and put it in those reserve accounts and then spend it on the appropriate projects. That's the one rule about spending that the state has dictated to you. Yeah, Lance.
So if we put, say, 10% aside for housing, which we're required,
Right.
we don't spend anything on it, does that 10% move forward for the next year and we can't spend it on anything else?
Correct. Once you put money into a reserve account, it stays in that reserve account until the point that you recommend an appropriation for town meeting.
All right, so we have a reserve account for housing, open space, and historic. So
Correct.
30% of it is already dedicated to those three
Correct.
areas.
And then the rest of it is optional. You can spend it on any
All
category.
right, so what's administrative?
35%.
Well,
No, it's only the three he said this required.
yeah.
And 5 is for
So
administrative.
let me explain. By the way, open space and recreation share a reserve account. By open space, we mean conservation and agricultural land. And by recreation, we mean active rec, like playgrounds, parks, community gardens, trails, things like that.
What's administrative?
Okay, so the law gives you the option to set aside 5% for administrative funds. And that's not required. Most communities set aside the full 5%, and I'll explain in a second what that money can be used for. But you don't have to. That's optional. And then the rest, if you do set aside the full percent, which is really a best practice, can be spent on any project. You know, you could add that to the housing and spend 75% that year on housing. You could divide this up. You could save this and not spend any of it. It's completely up to you. That 65%, if you do an administrative account, can be spent on any type of project. All right, so let's talk about and I'm actually a few steps down, Lance. I'll get to details on the administrative budget. All right, so let's do your FY27 budget. So your municipal officials estimated that your local surcharge in FY27 will be somewhere around 167,000. The November 26th state match, if we use the 15% figure of what you're expected to collect this year, which is a little less because it goes up every year, that estimate is 24,000. So your total projected revenue for FY27 is $191,000. All right, so that's what you're going to want to do a budget for at this year's town meeting. And then every year thereafter, you'll want to do a budget for the following town fiscal year. All right, you with me so far?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's put that money into the various accounts. So you know you don't have any projects this year, right? So you have to reserve $19,100 for each of these three reserve accounts. That's required by the law. You have no choice. Even if you didn't vote at a town meeting, DOR would tell the municipal officials to move the money themselves. You have to do that. That's required. And to answer a question that sometimes gets asked, I've never seen town meeting not approve a budget because it's required. But I suppose it is possible town meeting would turn that down. But then, like I said, DOR would tell you have to do it anyway. All right. It's optional to do the rest of these things, but we would suggest that the best practice you do. 5% can go to administrative, so that would be $9,560. And we'll explain what that can be used for in a minute. You don't have any project recommendations this year. All right. The That means you have $124,150 unbudgeted, okay? Because of municipal finance rules in Massachusetts, this is not a CPA rule, this is the way it works for the general municipal funds as well. If you leave that money unbudgeted and have not put it in a particular budget account through town meeting, you will have access to that money next year, but only until the tax rate is set by the town. Town sets its tax rate in late November, early December. So by late November, early December, every piece of money that you expect to receive in your CPA budget has to be tucked into a particular account approved by town meeting. That's why towns do their budget for the following fiscal year early, because it has to be locked in before town meeting happens. You can sometimes have a fall town meeting and make some changes to your current year budget, but once the tax rate is set, you're locked into that budget for the year. You cannot change it at all. Works the same way with CPA. So in order to have access to that money for the full fiscal year, what DOR suggests communities do is put that in what's called a budgeted reserve account. It's just a temporary account. It's only a transfer on the town's books. It puts it in an account that remains active for the entire FY27. And next spring, if you need that money, you can appropriate from the budget account because it's an official account that's been approved by town meeting. If you didn't do that and you needed that $124,000 next spring, you would not be able to have it because the tax rate would have been set and it would not have been put in an account by town meeting. So that's what the budgeted reserve is.
Where would it go?
Where would what go?
That money, the money that.
So if you didn't do a budgeted reserve, you would lose access to that money when the tax rate was set. It would sit out in purgatory for the rest of the fiscal year. And then when the town closed the books on the fiscal year at the end of the summer, they would transfer that to an account called the CPA fund balance, which is basically the stabilization fund or the FinCom reserve of CPA. It's their savings account of all money that has not been spent in the past.
But they still have control over that money.
Correct.
Can we then spend it another year?
Yeah, that's what would happen.
So it just delays.
It delays it by 6 months, right? But that 6 months is when you have your town meeting and you might need that money, right? So that's why it's important to do a budgeted reserve. You'll get it eventually if you don't do a budgeted reserve, but maybe something's gonna come up in between where you would have liked to have had that money. So you're just parking it temporarily in an account.
So, you're gonna get into a little bit more details on administrative fund?
Yes.
All right, I'll just hold my question until you do.
Okay. And I think that's in the next two things.
Okay.
So we're gonna do that FY27 budget in a minute, but I wanna answer Lance's question about the administrative, so you guys can decide whether you wanna do that or not. You also have FY26 money, right? And it's too late to do a budget for FY26. Why is it too late? Because the tax rate has already been set. You guys didn't even exist before the tax rate. DOR knows that no CPC gets organized in their first year before the tax rate is set. This is a typical time frame to have your first meeting. So they created a special dispensation just for the first year that you have CPA, that the town officials can take that 10% from your FY26 money and create those 3 reserve accounts. Because you have to do that for FY26. You know, you're gonna get 157,000, 160 or so in revenue in FY26. And you've got to take 16,000 of that and put it in the 3 reserve accounts. And the town will do that when they close the books next summer.
So we don't have to worry about it.
You don't have to worry about it, but I do recommend that after town meeting, you know, when it's clear, when the town tells you, you know, it looks like it's going to be exactly $167,222, I would recommend that the CPC take a vote and say, I move to send a memo to the town accountant to remind them to set aside $16,272 in each of the 3 reserve accounts for FY26. And that way you have a record of, you know, having gone on record and reminded them, and someone sends a quick memo to the town to remind them, and then it gets done.
So you would put the money in the 3 accounts, plus you would put it in the
No.
Flexible account, right?
No, the rest of the money, it would have been too late to put it in a budgeted reserve, because you didn't do
Okay.
that before the tax rate is set. The rest of all the actual money that's collected is gonna drop into something called the CPA fund balance. That's your savings account. All the money unspent at the end of a fiscal year, when the town closes the books, they drop that into the fund balance.
So that would not be part of the FY 27 budget then?
Correct.
Okay, got
But
it.
you could spend that next spring's town meeting,
Yep,
so your fund balance is always available to spend, any money that's in your fund
Okay.
balance. And a lot of things go into the fund balance at the end of the year. The town does that for you when they're closing the books. But
okay,
if you had an administrative budget of $10,000 and you only spent 5,000, that $5,000 didn't get spent, the town's gonna close that when they close out the books and put it in the fund balance.
okay,
Someone might walk in 3 years late paying their tax bill, and they're paying their CPA surcharge 3 years late. You didn't put that in your budget. That's gonna be extra revenue you didn't expect. The town's gonna put that in your fund balance at the end of the year.
okay,
You have projects that are done and they don't use all the money. They turn back some of the money. The town's gonna put that in the fund balance at the end of the year. Any little unspent pot of money, the town every year is gonna close that to the fund balance.
okay,
And for FY 26, it's gonna be a big chunk of money, but you're only the only thing you can do is do the 310 reserves accounts, and then the rest will be sitting there in the fund balance, waiting for you to use next year if you want to.
okay,
So next year, when you do your first projects, you're gonna have 2 years worth of money. You're gonna have FY 26, which is gonna be, some of it's gonna be sitting in the three
And
reserve
FY
accounts, the
27.
rest is gonna be sitting in the fund balance. You're gonna have your FY 27 from the budget we're gonna do. And you could spend FY 28 money as well, just like the town does. They're always spending a year in advance. So usually a CPC has 3 years worth of money at its disposal the first time. And a lot of times they'll just use what's already collected, what's in the fund balance and the current fiscal year, and they'll leave the next year for the future.
I keep thinking of a point and I want to bring it up, and I have in other meetings as well. And with your experience
Yep.
getting this off the ground and working with new communities, small communities, we don't have a town newspaper. How do we communicate to the community?
Yeah. Well, for the public hearing, how do you advertise public hearings? A legal notice in what?
Nobody gets it.
Which one reads, well,
Harold. So,
okay,
so for your legal notice, the only time you guys are gonna have to do a legal notice is once a year when you do that public hearing. You have to put in each of 2 weeks. And by the way, that gets charged to the administrative budget.
Yeah.
You don't want the town to have to pay that for you. They don't have the extra money. So that's an example of what the administrative budget can be used for. But as far as, letting people know that the applications are available, and, as far as spreading the word on a great new park opening, it's becoming harder and harder. I mean,
or even that this now exists.
So-
So many people
anyway,
don't know.
can we, question, put out like something in the water bills or the tax bills?
I mean,
They cost money.
I don't know.
No, I mean, we've already.
But
paid
we'll
for
have
the ambulance.
administrative
I
costs.
was gonna say, so like the Cosmo Godray Endowment does an annual mailer to everybody.
Yeah,
yeah,
The thought, it's about 2,000
postcards,
Yeah,
whatever it is.
Go
I
ahead
can
and
read
read
you that.
a lot of CPCs do that out of their administrative budget.
Yeah.
Or you create something and insert it in the tax bills or the water bills, and there's a
Yeah, that's what I'm
charge
thinking.
for that.
But rather than
You know-
get people when they're cranky opening up.
Yeah, and by the way, not everyone gets their tax bill, because a lot of them are paid by their mortgage company, so they don't actually see.
Well, I was just thinking like the water
Oh, like
bill.
that.
Everyone gets
Yeah.
their water bill every
Yeah.
quarter.
Not
And
everybody.
Except if you have a well.
you have a well.
Just a mailing.
Well, that's right,
The
never mind.
postcard.
And any of those
Yeah,
things,
yeah.
they've all been done by CPCs, and the bottom line is you pay for that out of your administrative.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Even if you wanted to put something in the tax bill or the water bill, the vendors that do that have a per unit charge, like it's 5 cents for them to insert or something like that. But you don't want to ask the town to pay for that. They don't have the money
Right.
for that. You do it out of the administrative account. Yeah, Bill.
So just one other thing to mention, when we did the campaign, we set up a CPA Facebook page. We have couple hundred followers. So anything, gonna try to, anything that you guys want to publicize, and I'll be putting on that.
Yeah, that's
Or-
great.
And-
Put it up on Apple Meadow.
Yeah. right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
Stuart,
sure. Yeah.
could could I just mention, this is Veronica Kell, within the past week and a half, our interim town administrator has set up a Facebook page for the town. It's just for announcements. And
That's great.
this could go on there. So if you go to Facebook and look for Town of Townsend, you should be able to see that page. And that's another place that this could go, I think.
It's becoming much harder, you know, the
It's a
death
weird-
of local newspapers.
it's a
I was
weird
a journalism major in college and it's killing me to see what's happening.
Well, I just think the younger generation with young families, it's, not everyone goes on Facebook. You know, we don't have a town newspaper. It's just hard to know what's going on.
Right. Yeah.
We're gonna need a CPC Instagram account,
Mm-hmm.
get anybody's attention.
Stand in front of Apple Meadow in Hannaford.
Yeah. Yeah, agree.
You all know who Pete Buttigieg is?
Mhm.
The gentleman who ran for president. He did a session, in Amherst, for, was it a book signing? I don't remember, but he had a large group of students, that it was hundreds of students this week that he was talking to in Amherst. And he asked them to raise their hand if they get their news from social media. Every hand in the room went up. And he said, okay, now put your down. Tell me if you get your news from television. No hands.
Mhm.
Really?
Because they don't even have cable. What are you talking
Yeah,
about?
they just watch TV on their
Not one of
computers,
them.
yeah.
Yeah, so there's a point. I thought that was a really interesting illustration.
And then say how many have touched a newspaper.
Yeah,
But then
The college students have never even touched
Facebook is
it.
not for young people.
yeah, that's for all
So it's
people. That's-
Instagram, it's.
Yep, that's for me.
it's
Facebook
whatever.
is me. Not, yep.
Right.
So I knew it was bad, but I didn't know it was that bad. That not one person would raise their hand, but. All right, so that's what's gonna happen with FY '26. You don't have to worry about that till after town meeting. You can't do anything at town meeting this year for FY '26. The tax rate's been set. Nothing you can do. Okay, so now to Lance's question. There are basically two types of CPA pots of money. The administrative money and project money. 5%, 95%. So what is the administrative account? Well, the administrative account is your expense account to run this committee. So things like a lot of CPCs hire staff to help them. Not usually in the beginning, but once applications happen, like 2 or 3 years in, the CPCs say, can we hire someone? This is a lot of work and we're 6 or 7 volunteers, you know? So I'd say about 65% of our communities have, you know, an administrative person. It's usually someone very part-time, you know, maybe 5, 10 hours a month or something like that in a town like this size, but that is fair game for the administrative fund. As you're doing your due diligence on projects, you might want to, like I said before, have a housing consultant. You get a complicated housing application and you can't make heads or tails of it. You're not housing professionals. You might have someone on retainer or a consultant that you pay to review the application and make recommendations. So any due diligence expenses. The two things that you cannot use the administrative for are for project expenses. So if someone comes to you and says, hey, we forgot to put money in for the handicapped stair rail, you know, when we were rehabbing a historic building, can we have some administrative money for that? No, there's a firewall between the administrative money and the project money. You can't backfill project out of the administrative.
In other words, if there's a deficit in another town budget, you can't fund that.
Not from the administrative account. You'd have to go back to town meeting to appropriate project funds for that.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
That brings up a good point. If we give them money for their project, but they still next year want to apply for more, there's nothing against them doing multiple applications
Or
for the
phase
same project.
all the time.
project.
A lot of times, if it's a construction project, you know, a really good way to do that is for the first year, they apply for a smaller amount of money to do all the project feasibility study, design, engineering, bidding, you know, all that work. And then they come back and that gets approved at town meeting and then they go do all that work. And then they come to you the following year and now they have an exact project designed with a budget and everything. So, you know, phase 1, phase 2 is a very common way to do construction projects. Yeah.
Money that's been allocated for the administrative account, can that be transferred into another project later on?
Yes and no. The administrative budget is active for 1 fiscal year. So
Yeah.
if you approve the $9,500 for the FY '27 administrative budget.
Yeah,
That will be available to you all during FY 27.
yeah.
Whatever you don't spend, the town will automatically drop that into your fund balance and it would be available for project spending.
Oh, I see.
And then town meeting is gonna authorize a new 5% fund out of FY 28
I
fund.
see.
Okay.
Okay. The thing about the administrative fund is it's your expense account for your committee. People don't apply to use your administrative account the way they apply for project funding, right? If another board comes to you and says, hey, we want to do a study for the historic commission of, old buildings in town. Well, that's the historic commission's project. That's not your project. That's not your idea. So it should come out of their administrative budget. So people don't apply for administrative funding. They apply for project funding. The administrative funding is.
But if they came to us and we thought it was something important, we could initiate that as our project,
As a
right?
as a project, you could recommend it as a project, if it was allowable. Yes, absolutely.
Wait, let's I'm trying to run that through my head.
Okay, you want me to say it again?
Yeah, so let's say the historic people are seeking funds or money to complete a project, as an example. How do we work with that again?
They apply for project funding for that.
Yeah.
Okay?
From their own budget?
No, from the CPA budget. They're gonna
They
ask
ask us for assistance.
project funding, right? But sometimes the administrative budget is easier to access, right? Once town meeting appropriates that money, now you folks can spend it just by a vote at your meeting, right? Someone says, I move we take $1,000 from the administrative budget to get an appraisal on a piece of land we want to buy. All in favor, yes.
Right.
So sometimes you'll get another committee that'll come to you in September and they'll say, hey, we want to do this study, between now and December and we don't have any money, can we use your administrative budget? That's their, that should come from their administrative budget.
So
That's
we're
their-
not talking about project budgets,
No,
we're
projects
talking
are
about the
fine.
administrative budget.
Exactly,
Okay.
right. But I'm just warning you, you will get requests of people who want to use your administrative budget. And that's not available. All right.
It's your phone?
So I think
It's
we
your
should
phone that's coming.
stop real quick here.
We're wondering who.
Shouldn't be
He
called.
can't- he can't hear it.
I think we should stop real quick here and take some action on the budget. So,
Can I ask one more question about the administration?
yeah,
The cost, could you do advertisements? Like if we wanted to do a big mailer or to do something to being like, hey, this is our first year, this is everything here, this is our website, this is our stuff. So we're gonna spend $2,000 just with us and we're gonna vote on it because we
Yeah.
already got it approved. We're gonna approve it now in May. And now June, we can even do it.
yep, we have a whole article on our technical assistance page of all the different things CPCs have done with their administrative money to get the word out. Brochures, all about the CPA program, events they're having, surveys. You can do surveys with, if you want to survey people on what things they want for the priorities, all sorts of things and those usually cost some money, right? Even sometimes just to have an event, you have to pay for the security detail or the cleanup or something like that, So those are all pretty broad for your administrative budget. It's anything that you feel is necessary in running your committee.
If we give out one of our first items, if we wanted to have like a cutting ceremony and do like a big ceremony of that, could that be
Absolutely.
part of the administration? Because that's
Absolutely.
like our
Absolutely.
first one. We want to say thank you,
And I would encourage you to do that. I mean,
yeah, have a big
it is your job.
A pair of those scissors.
It is really your job to help promote the program and tell people what their taxpayer dollars are going for, right?
So they can be like little signs or something that could be at each of the properties. or
Another
something.
great example. You've got the administrative budget spent already. This is
Yeah.
perfect. This is
Mike, I was
exactly-
originally saying that's too much. I don't want it.
This is exactly what it's for.
Subcommittee.
So communities use their administrative budget and they print up, these big banners, thank you Townsend, this project, funded by you through the CPA Act, Northampton printed like 10 of these black and white banners, and every time there's a project, they require the applicant to put it up on the construction fence. And then Northampton was one of the very few times that someone ever tried to revoke CPA. Someone's only tried 4 times. And it lost at the polls. Like 80% of the people said, nope, continue taxing us. We love this. And when they talked to people, it was those silly black and white signs that people had been seeing for a decade all over town, saying that all this, the new parks, the new housing, the facade on the historic theater downtown, it had all been paid for out of CPA, and people understood what their money was from. So signs are very critical for CPA projects, we think. Hang on one second, Lynn, because
If anybody wants to go right downtown Pepperell around the Rotary, the basketball court, there's a sign right there you can see. You
CPA.
can just take a look at it, it's right up there, right downtown Pepperell, so.
thanking people for,
Yeah, that's right, it's a CPA project.
Oh, they
Right there
applied vice, huh?
on the side of the basketball court when you enter.
That is awesome. I need a picture of that next time we drive through there. Yes, Lynn.
Can we use, funds that are in the other category for administrative expenses?
No, there's no mixing of project expenses and reserve accounts for the categories. Those are project expenses. You can't mix that with the
Just
administrative.
5% is the max. that we can
5% is
use
the max, right?
Okay,
For that year.
Every year.
5% is the max for administrative?
Correct.
Yes.
Now, at the end of the year, then, anything that's left over goes into the quote.
Yeah, you don't, unfortunately,
You can't build
the
it.
administrative account is the only CPA account that doesn't carry forward.
So we need to spend it.
Yeah, you spend it, or if you don't, and most communities do not spend everything in their
Correct.
administrative account, even 9,500. The town will automatically put that into your CPA fund balance account.
Oh, to be used
So-
in the next.
So then we
CPA
can,
money.
so then we can put it like maybe towards a project the
Exactly.
next year.
Right.
That's right.
And town meeting's gonna give you a
All right.
new
You
$9,500.
can't grow your admin.
No.
All right, cause I have, I typically have a problem with admin accounts, it's like.
Right. So you can grow, you can grow your reserve accounts for the project.
Right.
Keep the
Dinner
money
Now, does
in
Robert
there.
have to sell his Lamborghini?
If he does, he has to put that in the administrative.
Administrative.
Right.
You haven't given it to me then.
But, just see a CPC member driving around in a Lamborghini. is kind of
The
odd.
reason
Oh, boy.
I'm suggesting that you vote on the FY27 budget tonight is when you do, this is what's gonna determine any money that you have to spend next year, right? So you have to do the 10% through town meeting. That's your second, FY27 is your second year of CPA. That special dispensation doesn't apply anymore. Town meeting has to put the money in the reserve accounts. And if you're gonna want an administrative budget as part of doing your CPA plan, if you wanna have an event or something, or how you're gonna advertise for your public hearing, you have to have, an administrative account for FY27. And this is really your only shot to get it done. So that's why
Okay.
I worked with Sabrina.
Oh.
All right, so I'm looking at this that I believe you prepared.
Yes.
So the amounts for 19,100
Right.
that are for the 3 accounts is mandatory.
Correct.
There's housing, open space.
Yep, and that's mandatory. And then, the amount for administrative is is the 5% maximum.
Right, that's optional.
Optional,
Most communities put aside the full 5%.
yeah.
Others sometimes, set a flat amount, say, let's do 7,500, a little less than 5%. It's up to you. I don't see any harm in putting aside the full 5% because at the end of the year, if you haven't spent it, it's just gonna go into your fund balance, right? It's not like
And we don't have
if
anything
you were
to
the
spend this year.
DPW and you were deciding on your budget and you were putting money in the DPW administrative budget, if you didn't spend it, you'd lose it back to the town. At the
But
end
we
of the
don't
year.
lose this.
You
This
don't
goes,
lose it.
all right.
Right, so that's
Yes.
why we recommend, putting the full
So,
5%.
to be clear, because we're talking about 2027,
Correct,
which is, we will be taking applications for, and we will be spending.
maybe,
Okay, well, we
Prob-
think maybe.
yeah.
But 26, we have to remember, is just sitting for us. We can't spend it because the budget's closed.
That's correct. You'll get access to FY26 money after the town closes the books this summer. So if you had a special town meeting next fall, and you wanted to jumpstart the process, even though you weren't accepting applications yet, and you had something special, you could do that. More likely, you would use the FY '26 next spring when you did your first project, so you'd have twice as much money.
Right.
So we really have no money until the fall.
Correct. That's exactly right.
When the,
Even-
okay.
If they vote.
Well, except,
Well,
except for this administrative account.
Right.
If town meeting votes on this in the spring, you'll have access to this July 1st.
Okay,
right.
So we can
Okay.
start advertising.
Right, because this is coming out of
Make
FY
sure we have
'27.
everything in
this
one
is
place.
We were talking about the fall, we were talking about the
Yeah,
FY
now.
'26.
May 2026.
Wow, we have to act on this tonight.
Yes, that's what you want.
I would suggest you do it.
You have to work on it. You have to vote on it tonight.
Yes.
Um,
We need
you want-
already a hold in place,
all right, is anyone on my committee here?
all of us.
We've all reviewed it.
Huh?
We've all reviewed it.
Okay, what about the subject of assigning the administrative funds in this budget?
Yes, because we want to use.
So we want to approve the whole, I think it's 191,000, is
Correct. Oh, yeah, I didn't put a total on there, but
Right.
that totals to exactly.
The total is 191,000.
191.
I make a motion that we approve the CPA sample annual warrant article that appropriates $9,550 for administrative expenses, appropriates for historic, community, and open space reserve, 19,100 for each, and the budget reserve of 124,150.
Wait,
I see.
but I think we're proposing our entire budget of 120.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's what I did.
Oh, it is.
It all adds up to
Oh, it
191.
does, okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
So I second the motion.
Any comments or discussion? Shall we move the article, please?
So moved.
Do we have to go around?
I
Yep.
think
Maria
it's a Zoom
Milliken,
meeting technically, so I think you need to do a roll call.
Maria Milliken, yes?
Rob Usula, yes.
Sandra Lord, yes.
Lance McNally, yes?
Kim Greeno, yes.
Irene Tungden, yes.
Irene Robertarian, yes. Thank you.
And who made the motion and who seconded?
I second
Let's
it.
take your
And I
name.
second.
Seconded by.
Irene seconded.
Okay.
The motion carries.
What?
I was gonna clarify too, if anything was to change before, that the exact numbers can be changed.
Yes, you
And I
can
don't
change
need
them.
the town meeting.
I don't know, someone from the CPC should probably plan to move the article at town meeting and explain it. I actually have a script that I used 20 years ago when I explained the CPA budget for the very first time at town meeting,
Okay.
because they won't understand what the heck this is.
That's good.
So
Yeah,
I
and I
think
think it's important that,
yes,
especially with the administrative budget,
right.
with him and his Lamborghini, I mean.
Yeah. So I'm happy to send you whoever's gonna move the article for the
That's the
CPC.
same car as your wife. What are you talking about?
I'm happy to send you, the little speech.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Explains this,
Thank you.
at town meeting. And then town meeting will vote on it.
Who
Yeah.
feels
And
comfortable?
I just should mention, the administrative money is an appropriation, meaning town meeting is approving the spending of that money, and now you can do that starting in July by just a vote of your committee. The others are reserves.
Yeah,
You slipped an extra word in there. You said appropriations and reserves or something like that.
Okay.
It's fine. But those are just transfers. The town's just gonna transfer 19,100 from your FY '27 revenue, anticipated revenue, into those reserve accounts. To spend any of that money, it needs another town meeting appropriation, right? To spend the budgeted reserve or any of the money in the reserve accounts. You need to go back and get that appropriated.
So, two things here. I think we have to alert the town clerk about our motion here.
So it's in your meeting minutes.
It'll be in the minutes.
It's in your minutes.
Okay,
And then the warrant article gets sent to the town administrator.
all right.
Who's doing that?
I was just gonna ask who typically, in your experience, goes to the town meeting to do this?
Usually someone from the CPC, whoever's comfortable, you discuss
Doesn't
it.
matter.
Yeah, you'll have another meeting, I'm sure, before town meeting.
We have one coming up, the 25th of
Yeah,
this
and you should
month.
discuss, who feels like they want to get up and.
Agenda doesn't match what we said.
It doesn't?
No, it says April 16th or something.
Oh,
Oh, third.
Or
waiting
no one
for
explained
Dave.
it.
I'm sorry?
I think, are you talking about your?
The agenda says our next meeting is April 16th, although our agreement was it was March 26th, so something happened, I don't know.
Well, then we should take care of that tonight.
I don't know when we're meeting.
It's
Get it all
definitely
frustrated.
March.
I thought it's the third Thursday of every month.
Well,
It's
but
going
that's
to be.
the town meeting.
Okay.
No, we had voted.
No, I know.
Weren't you away?
I will,
I think there was an issue with someone was gonna be away.
I was going to be
This-
away,
Stuart, do you need to
so,
finish your presentation?
but
Yeah, you can do this
No.
now.
Not do this now.
I'm fine.
no, I was going to be away, but that is why the 26th would be the third Thursday of every month. And I should be here.
I don't have the agenda in front of me. Does anyone have a copy? I can make that.
I can get an agenda copy, hold on.
Do you have the agenda? Send it out.
I have it, hold on. There it is.
Nice meeting you, Bill, after
Hey,
talking
you
to you
too.
for so many times.
I'm sure we'll leave.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you so much, Bill.
Thank you very much.
So it says,
Yes.
it says next meeting, April 16th, but
Oh,
we discussed
okay.
March 26th.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did this.
Yeah. 2 weeks ago.
26.
So I don't know what happened when this.
Are you still available for March 26th?
I will be, yes.
Well,
So our next meeting is going to be March the 26th.
Yeah, while you're,
nobody knows why this.
March 26th.
so while
It must have just
while you're
been
here,
in
someone
there.
make a motion to set the next meeting at March.
Okay, yeah, I'll make a motion to revise or update, correct the agenda from April 16th to March 26th for our next CPC meeting,
Right.
monthly meeting
I second it.
It's at 6 o'clock.
at 6 o'clock.
Are we meeting with some other committees? Maybe that was one of the things.
Not that I recall.
We were supposed to see if the board of assessors could meet, but then there's been they're not meeting.
They weren't available or something, yeah. I'd have to refer to that email from Sabrina.
Any discussion?
6 PM. Nope, and we had a second, so we have to go around.
Irene, Condon, yes.
Kim Greeno, yes.
So Kim, since you're the clerk, then you're responsible for sending the agreed on motion that we voted on for the warrant to one of the selectmen
The town administrator.
or the town administrator, okay?
We have a Word version of this in that email, right?
Yes,
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay, you're going around here.
Roll call.
We're in the middle of a roll call vote though.
Wait,
I'm sorry.
we have a motion
Yep.
on the
To
floor
revise the meeting date.
to establish
Correct.
March 21st at 6 o'clock.
Has the motion been accepted?
Yes.
Yes.
Lance McNally, yes.
Sandra Lord, yes.
Rob Usula, yes.
Maria Milliken, yeah.
Robert Herring, yes.
Okay.
All right, ready to move on?
Yep.
Okay, I think we've kind of covered this before, but the process by which projects happen is folks submit applications, you review it, you get input from whoever you need to, you make your recommended list of projects, and then they go to town meeting. It only takes a majority vote to approve CPA projects at town meeting, with a couple of exceptions. If you're buying land, it's almost always a 2/3 vote. If you're bonding against future CPA revenue, that's also a 2/3 vote.
Just typing your
But other than that, all the projects are voted on at town meeting at the majority vote.
Did you guys catch that?
No.
Okay, I think it's an important point. So at town meeting, it's a majority vote to pass what we're doing with this money. Our
Interesting.
projects, majority.
Yep, the only examples of 2/3 are if you're buying land and if you're using bonding for future, against future revenue.
Oh, so purchases of land still with CPA money is still 2/3.
Correct.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Actually, eminent domain is 2/3 as well, but that's not that common.
I want to just, make a, hypothetical example.
Yeah,
Supposing the town itself decides to approach us to repaint the town hall. Because they don't have money to
Fix the
paint.
windows, maybe.
Would that be something, would there be a conflict there at all?
No, as a matter of fact, we're gonna get into who applies for CPA money in a bit. But the town is usually the biggest applicant for CPA funds. So if the town administrator wants to do something, he submits an application, or the select board tells the town administrator to submit an application. If the rec department or the DPW might be the ones to take care of the parks in town, they all submit applications the same as anyone else. And they are usually the biggest, most towns do some private projects as well, with community groups and things like that, historic museums. Looks like you had a beautiful historical society museum here that could use some work that's the way it works.
So in that example, like with the Historical Society, they're a nonprofit, they have their own fundraiser. So would any nonprofit maybe make an application to cost share with CPA funds?
Sure,
Is that a thing?
Yeah, I mean, most CPCs, if a nonprofit is coming to them, want to see that the nonprofit has some skin in the game, that they've done some fundraising. They don't like
Cool.
a lot of them don't like to be asked for 100% of the project funding for a private project. But yeah, that's a big part of CPA.
That's neat.
And there are right ways and wrong ways to do that, but that's too complicated to get into tonight.
Thank you.
No problem. All right, so now you send your recommendations to town meeting. The votes at town meeting are slightly more limited than a regular project. Town meeting can approve your recommendation. They can reject it, say no, like we talked about before. They can also vote to reduce the amount. They could say, we love this playground project, but 500,000, that's too rich. We only want to spend 250. I move to approve the project at 250. They have the right to do that. They cannot raise the project. They also can't make major changes to the project because then it's not your recommendation anymore. Mm-hmm. So if you said you wanted to rehabilitate Johnson Park on Johnson Street, someone can't stand up and say, well, I want the park on our side of town to get renovations too. So I move to amend it to say half the money will go to Johnson Park and half the money will go to Bob's Park. Can't do that because that wasn't your recommendation. And we know CPA projects can't be voted on at town meeting unless you recommend them first. So any major changes. This last one, I won't even review. We cannot understand why it's in the law, and it's never happened before. So in the interest of time, because we are running a little late, I'm going to skip that last amount of the last possible thing. All right, so this is what I teased before. Who is eligible for CPA funds? The law says nothing about this, by the way. So there's no rules on this. But we've seen through 25 years, that the town itself and nonprofits and community groups in town are the biggest, folks who apply for CPA funding. But there are some other things that have come up from time to time. The law doesn't say they're not allowed, but there's some caution that you should give with certain types of projects. So you really can't give any money to a non-incorporated entity. This comes up more in cities. Like the Friends of Park Square, is a loose association of people who fix up Park Square, but they're not a 501c3. They have no corporate structure. Who's the town going to write the check to when they go to give them money to do their work? So you really can't give money to a non-incorporated entity. Sometimes people with historic homes come to the CPA looking for funds. We know of a couple communities that do that. But they're very large cities with really sophisticated, staffing and department and rules and requirements. It's very difficult to give an individual homeowner. You really don't want to be voting on whether to do Mrs. Johnson.
No,
At that meeting.
that's messy.
Yeah. So, and then privately owned historic buildings, that's pretty popular with CPA funds. But you want to make sure that it's done properly, as we hinted at before. It's too difficult to get into it tonight, but you're giving public money to a private organization. You got to make sure to protect the public's interest in that building. Maybe a preservation restriction might be appropriate. A first right of refusal if they ever close up and have to sell the building, something like that. We also sometimes see religious institutions or commercial buildings that are historic apply for funding. And again, there's no right or wrong with that, but there's some high litmus tests that you'd want to pass And we have some articles on our website about the proper way to do those type of projects. Yeah, Lance.
So, let's just, I'll pick an example, or let's just say that we have a CPA project that we approve for renovating the old library.
Okay.
So the funds would, probably go to the town that would then manage the restoration of that building?
Yep. And I do like to see, when you do CPA, warrant articles, to see a line in there that says something like, said funds to be expended under the direction of.
Okay.
So it might be the library board of trustees, or the board of selectmen, or the
Okay.
town administrator. But yeah, typically the CPC is not an operating board, so you're making recommendations, town meeting's appropriating the money.
Got it.
But then the town is, setting up the project account on the town's books, and they're actually doing the
Yeah,
project.
so we wouldn't be interacting with, say, the construction company that's actually going to do the work on the
No.
library.
No.
We would basically go through the town to have, like, the selectmen administer it through the facilities committee or
Exactly.
whatever.
And,
Okay,
and that's why it's good to specify, just to avoid problems later on, it's always
Yeah.
good to put in the warrant article, who's in charge?
okay.
So when I read the state statute, it did mention somewhere in there exemptions about the uniform bid process.
Yeah.
But that means this committee doesn't go through the uniform bid process, but once something's hypothetically recommended by us and then approved at town meeting and handed off to, say, a town board, then the uniform bid process
Yes.
would apply?
A CPA expenditure and appropriation is no different than a regular town meeting appropriation. So it's all subject to procurement.
Now I'm reading that, it makes more sense.
Yeah, right.
I was like, well, that's interesting.
But there is a couple of exceptions.
Yeah.
One is specified in the law. The one exception where you don't have to go through procurement is when you buy land with CPA funds.
Oh, maybe that's where I read that too.
Right,
Yeah, yeah.
because, when you want to buy a piece of conservation land that's adjacent to the town forest, you want that piece of land. You don't want to advertise in the central register. We're looking for 10 acres of conservation land. If you have some land that you want to sell us,
It's not
we'll
feasible.
accept the highest bidder. So you don't have to go through procurement when you're
Yeah.
doing land. And then the other thing, when you're giving money to a private nonprofit, that is not subject to procurement either. The town is making a grant to that organization. They're the ones that have to hire the contractor, accept the liability, oversee the work, get the warranty and that sort of thing. And then the town just reimburses them afterwards out of the CPA account. But they're, usually you sign a grant agreement. We can talk about that at another time. Yeah.
So let's just say that we want to restore the library.
Mhm.
So we work with the selectmen or the town and we say, give them up to $300,000.
Yeah.
They're gonna go through the bid process.
Yeah.
If they only spend 280,000, do we get that 20,000 back?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yep. And that should be, when the project is closed out, someone, whether it's the CPC or whoever's in charge of the project, sends a note to the town accountant saying, we have completed the project. It looks like there's 20,000 left. Please put that back to the CPA account from which it came. Yep, that money does not go to the town.
Okay.
There's that firewall we talked about between
Yeah,
the
all right, they go
CPA
through
fund
it.
and the town account. All right, this is, kind of talked about this. I'm gonna skip a few slides in the interest of time, that we have tonight, because we are really, late, because I really want to get to this slide. All right, so this is the single most important piece of CPA paper or slide or electronic on your screen, however you look at this. It's called the CPA allowable usage chart. And this tells you what you can spend CPA project money on. And it's kind of complicated. This chart makes it easier. It doesn't make it easy, but it makes it easier. I'd say probably 80% of the technical assistance calls we get are about allowable usage. We got an application to do this. Is that legal? And the reason why it's a little complicated is it's not just about the 4 categories. We all know the 4 categories of CPA. We don't need a chart to tell us those. We're probably all saying off the top of our head now. But what's not really understood is that CPA can't pay for everything related to those categories. the project has to be described by one of these verbs to be eligible for funding. So we can't fund every historic project, far from it. We can only, in the historic category, can only fund projects that are acquiring a historic resource. In CPA, historic resource is a building, structure, vessel, meaning a boat, not a vase, real property, document, or artifact. Those are the 6 historic resources that can be purchased with CPA funds. So you actually are buying one of those, which is not that common. I need a boat. Preserving one of those 6 things. The definition of preservation is protection of the asset from injury, harm, or destruction. Or most commonly in the historic category, this is the box where most of the activity is. You're rehabilitating a historic building or a historic document or a historic artifact.
What would the support, I mean, I know create would be like building, and obviously if it's
Right, yeah, that's a
historic, we're
good
not
one. The
building, but what is
legislature understood you
support?
can't create something new
Yeah,
in the historic
yeah.
category.
But
I
what's
love that.
support, like what would that be an example of?
Support is only available in the housing category, and there is a definition of support.
Okay.
In the housing category. The definition section of CPA is pretty important. It's section 2. It's probably I don't want to say that you all have to read the law. It's 17 pages. If you do, don't do it late at night and fall asleep. But if you're going to read anything, read section 2, the definitions. That's kind of where the rubber meets the
So
road.
what's an example of support for housing?
For housing would be a rental assistance program. So you're not actually building new construction housing, but you're providing rental assistance to people. Or writing a housing production plan if the town didn't have one. You could write a housing production plan, or hiring a housing consultant for the town that can help the town figure out how to attract more affordable housing investments to the town.
Can I use the example, not the town would bring this forward to CPA of this building, right?
Yep.
And where I imagine you have some thoughts on where support versus rehabilitate would come in, if there was maintenance that had been put off versus a series of things that had to be done.
Right. So CPA funds can never be spent for ordinary maintenance, right? Never be spent for ordinary
So is
maintenance.
painting considered ordinary maintenance?
Well, painting is a difficult one. Can I
Well, if it's
put
on a
that aside for
historic
second?
building.
But ordinary maintenance would be, or operating expenses, or cleaning the cleaners that clean the building, tuning up the boiler once a year, paying for the oil for the boiler,
What
changing.
about a whole new system?
fixing
Or like a new
broken
roof, for
system.
example.
So what CPA can pay for is not maintenance, but capital improvements. So a whole new boiler? Yes.
Or
A new roof? Yes. Windows? With historic windows, you kind of want to try to preserve the old windows, and there's companies that will take out these historic windows and completely rehab them, or you put on an exterior storm or interior storm. You can replace historic windows, but it's a kind of frowned upon.
I think that's like capital, I've been
Yeah.
looking at some of that, so the capital planning thing might come
Right.
to.
So CPA
We'll
is
look at
based,
all of those.
yeah, CPA is a capital program. It's for capital improvements to these assets here. Maintenance is never allowed, operating expenses are never allowed. Now, what people will often point out, and it's true, if you don't maintain something for a decade, all of a sudden it needs to be replaced, right? If you don't tune up your boiler every year, with the oil company coming to tune it up, in year 10, it's gonna clunk out, and the guy's gonna say to you, you need a new boiler. It's completely shot. So it is true that if you defer the maintenance, you could come to CPA and get them to pay for it. But it's like a soundbite. It sounds good. Is there a town out there that is actually saying, let's not maintain anything so we can get CPA to pay for it in 10 years? No, that's not happening. So it's a good soundbite, and it is true. I mean, towns are pretty terrible about maintaining their assets. Every town is, I haven't found one that's good yet, because there's no money. There's no money. So that's one of the great things about having CPA. When you have a building like this, I walked into this building and I said, this is a spectacular building. The town needs to make sure that it, is kept up. So this is a prime example. We've had so many historic town halls rehabbed with CPA fund. And the great thing is, it looks like you've done a ton of work with that bond issue here. Now you nip and tuck a few things that need to be done. And that's great.
Now everything's 20+ years old.
Yeah. So roofs get old and systems get old. All right, so, let's step through a couple of examples, of how you use this chart, okay? Because this is the most important thing, is figuring out whether you can do something or not. All right, so let's say, ironically, the example I chose was select board owns a historic building and is applying for CPA funds, and they want a new boiler. How do you like that for an example I gave? And then they also have to do some exterior facade improvements because it's a brick building and it's all failing and water is intruding in the building. By the way, someone asked about painting. So the deal with painting is it kind of follows the IRS maintenance versus capital improvement code. Ordinary painting, anything that has to be done on an ordinary schedule is maintenance. So if it's just an ordinary painting, after 10 years, you got to scrape and paint. That's not eligible for CPA funding. But usually there's a ton of work that needs to be done. Like half the clapboards are rotted. They have to go through and fix those. Cornices have fallen off the building. If you're doing a facade rehabilitation on the outside, of course, you're going to need to paint that when it's done. That would all be okay. So that's why painting sometimes is eligible and sometimes not. If it's just an ordinary paint job, not eligible. But if it really comes with a complete rehabilitation of the exterior and then painting, that it would be eligible. So, all right. So here's the project. Select board is applying, and they want to do these two things to a historic building. So the first thing is this building eligible for CPA funding? And in the historic category, there are those 6 things that are a historic resource: a building, structure, vessel, real property, document, or artifact. Well, this is a building, right? So far, so good. But not every building is eligible for CPA funding. It has to either be listed on the State Register of Historic Places, or your historic commission has to take a vote to deem the building significant in the history, culture, architecture, or archaeology of Townsend. Not all 4 things, any one of those things would qualify. So does anyone know if this building's on the State Register, Historic Places?
I don't know.
Don't know.
I don't know
If it wasn't,
It may be because we talked about the Hart Library and the Hart Library is not.
is not, okay, so it might be. Even if it's not, if the select board, sent the town administrator to the historic commission meeting and gave a quick 30-second history of this building, certainly the historic commission would vote to deem this significant, probably in the
Be
architecture.
careful.
Are you on the historic commission? The historic
It's
commission
a
version?
tough one.
Would you not say this?
I
is
would.
Significant historic building?
I would.
Significant for the culture and
I would.
and the
I
architecture?
can only speak for myself.
Yeah,
I'm
that
just
would
kidding.
probably be a pretty easy vote. But one of these 2 things can't just be a historic building, because this is designed to stop the town from that has a concrete bunker for their water department where the wellhead is, and it's 70 years old and needs to be replaced. And they say, this is our historic water supply system, And so this, and they would say, yeah, it's a structure, it's eligible. Well, that's why these other 2 things are there, because no historic commission worth their salt is going to vote to declare a 70-year-old concrete bunker in the middle of the woods as a historic resource significant to the culture and history of the town. So
If I might interrupt, I just want to confirm for everybody that I know there's 2 members to the historic district that are new to that commission, but the town hall is definitely properly registered as a historic place, so don't worry about that. You're in.
I got it.
That's great. All right. So we just got the word from, is it Victoria?
Yes.
Yes, we just got the word from Victoria that it is on the State Register. Although I would suggest you always ask for applicants for the actual documentation in the application, because people misremember things. But let's assume that it is. So now we're going to go on to step 2. So now you go to the chart, right? You have to find, for every project, you have to look at the budget for that project and find the box that justifies those expenses, right? So here we got to buy a new boiler and install it, and we've got to hire a company to do the facade improvements, right? So are you acquiring this building for those 2 tasks? No, you already own it. Are you preserving it, protecting it from injury, harm, or destruction? I would say the exterior work probably would be classified as preservation. And I'd say the boiler is probably rehabilitation. You know, you're rehabilitating the HVA system of the building, because it probably needs a bunch of things besides just the boiler. So part of this project is in this box, part of the project is in this box, right? So far, so good. Now, step 3, should we fund the project? A lot of times when a CPC takes an application and there's a lot of gnashing of teeth and discussion about whether it's eligible, and you look at the chart, you figure it out, and you call the coalition and you spend a month arguing about whether it's eligible, and you decide, yes, it's eligible. A lot of people think it's fait accompli that the CPC is going to recommend it. But that's where the work starts, right? Getting something to eligible, now, is it a priority? Does it make sense? That's where the CPC's role really is to add value, right? So is that project a priority in your CPA plan? You know, what competing applications do you have? You're probably going to have more applications than you have money. You know, you're not just going to, like we talked about, you're not just going to send them all to town meeting and say, you guys figure it out on town meeting floor. You've got to make recommendations and prioritize things. A lot of times you're going to get applications that are scant on the details and big on the ideas, and it's not ready for prime time, right? You don't want to get out ahead of a project, or it's very controversial and the controversy hasn't been resolved. You know, you don't want to put your program's integrity on the line by getting too far ahead of something. You know, remember, you're stamping your recommendation on this in front of town meeting. You know, when you stand up and present it, or the applicant stands up, you want to have it pretty bulletproof by the time it goes there. And then the last thing is, a lot of CPCs ask, you know, what have you done so far to raise money? You know, other funding. Maybe it's not possible. A lot of times for the town, there is no other money. But a lot of CPCs want to see at least some effort made in that regard.
Who oversees the CPC? So in other words, if we have a project for cleaning carpets, which is clearly not appropriate, who
Right.
oversees or polices us?
It's the same as any other town meeting appropriation. There is no state agency that is overseeing that. It's the town taxpayers. So
Okay.
any appropriation that is made at town meeting, 10 taxpayers can get together and they can sue the town if they feel it's inappropriate. And we have had CPA lawsuits. You have 18,000 projects. You're going to get a few in there that weren't quite good. You know, Newton was sued over a recreation project, so was Wayland. Oak Bluff was sued over a church project. North Andover was sued over a recreation project. So and there are more too. The big one was Acton was sued over a church project. And we have a whole description of that case on our website.
That's why you said church, be wary or be
Because there
warned.
was a lawsuit on it. Yep.
Cautious.
So that would be something where we would have approved it and gone to a town, voted on, we started the project, or the project was completed, then there's the lawsuit.
Actually, the way the 10 taxpayer lawsuit law works, the only time that the 10 taxpayers can sue is between the time of the town meeting appropriation and the time that contractual obligations have been made by the town on the project. So there's that window. So usually, you know, there's controversy and the lawsuit comes in like a week after town meeting because they
Right.
want to preempt the town from actually
Okay.
starting that project.
All right, so there's not damages there in that case.
No.
It's just that they stopped the project.
Right, so it's actually pretty hard to sue a municipality because people would be suing, you know,
Yeah.
everyone hates their town, right? You know, people would be suing all the time. So if
Okay,
you could sue for, you know, a bad paving project from 1995, you know, there'd be no end to the legal budget.
Okay.
So it's a very limited, but so basically the town is policing itself is
Okay.
the answer to your question. So, yeah.
Would this board, if they encounter legal funds, that be through their administrator?
Yes, so if you folks have, and normally most towns do not allow their boards or commissions to go directly to town council. You have to go through the select board to get permission to do that. But if you have a legal question, don't be shy. That's what your administrative budget is for. So you would go to the select board, the town administrator, and say, hey, we want to ask this question of town council. And when town council, you know, sends a bill to the town for that month of all their services, they should itemize, you know, we spent 4 hours on this question, whatever, and they should itemize the CPA question, and that should be charged to your administrative budget. You know, the select board's budget for legal services is always stretched thin. So, you know, you want to own that as your own expense, but that's what it's for. And it can be very helpful. You know, a lot of times we have seen almost every question. And so folks like to call us first, but we're not attorneys. We can tell you what we've seen in the past, and we can probably show you documentation from other towns or DOR, but sometimes you really have to go to town council, and you can do that, as long as you go through the select board. All right, so you gotta decide, you know, the project we determined was eligible, but doesn't make sense. You know, then you make your recommendation and your vote. All right, now let's go through a project much simpler that's not eligible for funding. I just gave it away. So let's say you get an application from the Historical Society. Don't you have that nonprofit in town, right? Mm-hmm. And they want to do an oral history video project. They want to hire a video production company for $20,000. They want to capture the stories of all the World War II veterans who are still in town. There's only 4 left. They want to interview them, capture their stories, edit it into a 30-minute video production, put it on display at the library, show it on cable TV, and put it in the 3rd grade curriculum. So the product, the expense, is a $20,000 video production company production. So, is this project acquiring a building, structure, vessel, real property, document, or artifact? Is it preserving one of those 6 things? Is it rehabilitating one of those 6 things?
It's creating.
It is not eligible for CPA funds.
Right.
And if anything, you are right. It's creating a brand new video. That video definitely supports the historic category in town, but it's not a capital improvement project that CPA was designed for. That's kind of how you step through this using the chart. Like I said, it's not easy, so don't be frustrated if you need to call to talk about allowable uses. And one thing we will offer you for the first time, when you get your first round of applications, you can send them to us. I'll set up a Zoom meeting with either the whole committee or representatives of the committee, and we'll step through each one, and I'll help you guys figure out.
So
exactly.
you are a point of contact?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. So that's why I gave you my card. So for your first round of applications, take us up on that. We really love to step through. We can't promise we're going to do it every year. That would be 200 communities times, you know, project recommendations. Some, you know, Boston gets 100 project applications every year. So, but the first time around, we're happy to help you. And then individual ones at any time, please call. So I'm going to skip this flow chart. It kind of steps through what we just did. I wanted to point out that in the recreation category, CPA is for outdoor recreation only. The definition of recreation is actually, when you read it in CPA, it's very clear. It's fields, forests, farmland, trails, parks, playgrounds. It is not for any stadiums. It actually specifically says in the definition of recreation, no stadiums, no indoor skating rinks or gymnasiums, sidewalks and streetscapes. Oh, that was a lawsuit in Norwell. Over a sidewalk project, and the town lost that. The only way you can do sidewalks is if they're inside a dedicated CPA project, so like inside a park or inside an affordable housing development that you're building. That's fine, but regular sidewalks along roads are now eligible for CPA funds. And the Wayland lawsuit, the North Andover lawsuit, were both about artificial turf. There's a carve out that says you can't use CPA funds for artificial turf. A long history to that. If you're interested, call me. I'll tell you how that came about.
Can you partner with those nonprofits? Like,
yes.
We practice on a grass field for football. It's terrible.
Yeah.
We destroy Peppertown Field.
Right. So we, in our town, did a CPA recreation project. We bought the land with CPA funds, and we built the field with CPA funds. But the advocates all wanted it to be a artificial turf field. So the Booster Club raised $500,000 on their own turf, and the CPA paid the 3.5 to build out the whole complex and buy the land.
So you can tease those things out. Cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can build an artificial turf field on land that you acquired with CPA funds. You can do all the other pieces of the project with CPA funds, but the actual artificial turf, you have to find another funding source. And typically those are so expensive, you'd never be able to pay for the whole thing anyway. So,
interesting.
So yes, it is possible to combine, and you can do that with any project. You know,
If the project is not eligible.
Well, what I was
or
getting at
eligible-
was less than specific examples.
Yeah, so if you're
eligible.
rehabbing
specific
Yeah,
examples.
so if you're
Yeah.
rehabbing the, doing some rehab work in this building, but they're also gonna paint the building at the same time and it's just ordinary maintenance, you pay for the rehab stuff and the town pays for the maintenance part. You can combine funding sources all the time in projects. The last thing I'll say about the categories, as we step through one slide on each, the housing category is gonna be your toughest challenge. A town like Townsend, very difficult to build affordable housing. Did I hear you say that part of the town is not even sewered, right? Some of you have.
Right. Well,
We don't have sewer.
None of it is.
Oh, so it's all on private
And
sewer.
about
Most of it.
50-50 for water.
Oh, okay.
It's all.
Kind of,
Yeah.
All private sewer,
All
water
private
is.
sewer.
Right. Half the town is got public water and the other half
I'm
is
not
wells.
sure the exact percentage.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, my town is all private wells and all private septic. So that's hard for housing. It becomes very expensive. You gotta build a water treatment plant, and if you're not in the place, a sewage treatment plant, if you're not in the place where you have water, you have to, build a public water supply. So it's hard. But don't ignore that category. The state is really pushing people now, as we know, that everyone has to do their part. It is the biggest problem in our Commonwealth is affordable housing. If we don't fix that problem, we're gonna be cooked. So it requires a local commitment. You could sit here till the cows come home. You probably will not get an affordable housing application dropped in your lap, So you have to go out and beat the bushes. You have to invite developers to come in and talk to you. You have to invite Habitat for Humanity to come talk to you, find out where the community development is, corporation, the local nonprofit that does housing development, and work with those people and really be intentional about trying to get after the housing effort, because it is hard.
Can
And
I
I think,
mention something, Stuart?
yeah,
While we're
absolutely.
talking about affordable housing, the town, through the Affordable Housing Trust, does have a concept for an affordable housing development on one of the properties that the town voted to be transferred to the Affordable Housing Trust. So we do have a project in the works. We lost the funding that we had to go forward. Our next step was to go forward to the community to get ideas on the concept. And we're waiting for funding so that we can do that. So hopefully within the next 6 months to a year, we'll be able to take that forward. Community.
You may get a housing application, which would be great. It's
Absolutely.
fantastic that that worked. And that was
Thank
town surplus town land that you transferred to the trust?
It was town-owned property that the town properties committee recommended be voted to be transferred to the trust, and it was voted at an annual town meeting in, I believe it was 2023.
That's fantastic. I want to move to Townsend. You guys are doing all these things. This is great. Thanks you for mentioning that. That's terrific. That's exactly the type of project where CPA can help out, I'm assuming the trust doesn't have any other funding sources that are regular.
Not at this point, but we are going back out with an RFP to sell one of the pieces of property so that we have funding to do the work that we need to do.
Great, super. All right, so this is the last slide I'm going to give you tonight. I know we're well over time. And a couple things we've talked about, but they worth repeating. This one we haven't talked about. There's a firewall not only between the administrative account and the project account within CPA. There's a second firewall, a thicker one, between the town's general fund and the CPA fund. You can't mix or match. It goes only one way. If the town wants to spend some general money to supplement a CPA project, that's great. But you can't reimburse the town for things they've already spent, right? No CPA money can find its way into the town's regular funding. And that includes paying for town personnel. So if you get an application to fix up a town park, the DPW, if they're going to do some of the work themselves, they pay for that through the regular staffing that they have in the town budget for DPW. CPA can pay for all the materials and outside contractors and the equipment rentals and that sort of thing. But staff time, that's part of their regular budget. So you can't supplant the town's regular budget with CPA funds. We talked about no maintenance or operating
expenses, and I just talked about the town staff time or expenditures that happen. A lot of times town will do something as an emergency and then they'll come after the fact and ask for CPA funds. CPA is not an emergency funding source because of the way it has to go through the application process, be considered fairly with all the others, CPC recommendation, town meeting. It really is very difficult to use CPA funds for an emergency, so it's really not an emergency fund. Whenever you buy land with CPA funds, you must permanently restrict that land for the purpose for which it was acquired. So if you buy land for affordable housing, just like the town did when they restricted that land and transferred it to the trust for housing, if you buy more land for housing, it has to be restricted to housing. If you buy land for conservation, it has to be restricted to conservation. If you buy land for recreation, same thing. And those restrictions are approved by the state and they're held by a third party. Typically like a land trust, for example, would hold the restriction on conservation. And then we don't have time to talk in detail about this, but communities that are your size sometimes have big ideas that, outstrip the amount of money you have available. Like buying land or really making a dent in the affordable housing or doing a huge project on this building, for example. You can bond against future CPA revenue the same way the town bonds against its future tax revenue to buy things. So more than 100 CPA towns have issued bonds and it's paid back against their future CPA revenue stream. So it reduces, what you have to spend in the future. But there's over $500 million of outstanding bonds on CPA projects.
Wow.
So typically buying land is often bonded. Top to bottom rehabs of historic buildings that instead of doing things piecemeal over 20 years, you want to do it all at once. That's typically a type of thing that's bonded.
So in a case like that, would you not take applications for that next year if you've already allocated that money to a project?
Well, there are rules about that. You can only bond up to what you can pay from your local surcharge. They won't let you bond against the state match because the state match ebbs and flows. So you always have your state match money. And you can't bond up to 100% because if it's a historic project, you still have to have 10% for your housing and 10% for your open space. So effectively, it's about 65% of your local surcharge that you can, or 75%. The 65% undesignated plus the 10% of whatever category the project in. So you can bond about 75% of your local surcharge. So you're always going to have some money the following year. You're going to have your state match money and you're going to have the reserve account for the other two. And taxes go up every year, so your CPA revenue goes up every year. So it's impossible to bond right up to the line. You'll always have some money. And CPCs do it differently. When Gloucester passed CPA, they all knew they did it to save their City Hall building. They have a spectacular, anyone seen Gloucester City Hall? It was built in the 1800s so that when all the fishermen made the final turn into the harbor and they looked up on the hill, they saw Gloucester City Hall, this beautiful grand building with a huge steeple on it. They knew they were home, right? And that building was in such bad shape, anytime the wind blew over 40 knots an hour, they had to evacuate Town Hall, City Hall, because they thought that the steeple was going to crash over. So everyone knew they were passing CPA, and the CPC decided right after they passed it, we're willing to spend 50% of everything we have for the next 20 years to rehab this building. And they didn't want to spend it all. They wanted to have room for other projects, but they made that decision. And they recommended, a $3.5 million bond to completely redo the City Hall. So you can do it that way. You can do it individually. It doesn't matter, but it is a very powerful thing. When you get to the point where you're thinking about that, I can come back. I have a separate presentation of everything you need to know about bonding. So we can review that. All right. So that's what I have for you. The remaining slides are just pretty pictures that inspire you about things that CPA funds have been used for, things you would never expect. I have done the express version of this in about 5 to 6 minutes. So I leave it up to you. You've been very patient. It's been, it's 7:39. we can skip this and you can look at them in your presentation.
To
And go
share
home.
the happy good fortune.
I have to share the happy good photos.
Yeah,
All right.
I think.
I'll get
Yeah.
to it quick.
For it.
There are some just great projects. So in the historic preservation category, that is Gloucester City Hall, by the way, under rehab. Restoration of historic municipal buildings is one of the most popular things. That is actually still the biggest ever CPA project. It was a $15 million top to bottom rehab of Needham Town Hall. Beautiful historic building. That's actual gold leaf being put.
Oh, remember
on
that
that
beautiful
cupola.
lighthouse?
And this is the old town meeting room. It had long ago in Tingsboro been chopped up into offices, and they restored it as a place for their town meeting on the second floor of town hall. So in historic preservation, using existing buildings in a different way is very popular with CPA funds. So this was an old town library in Cohasset. It's now 2 units of affordable housing. That was a shoe factory in Middleborough. It's now affordable housing. This was the groundbreaking of an old town hall restoration in Chelmsford. Chelmsford actually has 3 town halls, their current town hall and 2 old ones. And they rehabbed both of the old ones. One's a community arts center and one's a meeting place. And this was the groundbreaking, both paid for with CPA funds on a bond at the same time. Private nonprofits we talked about, right? So this is in Westfield. Westfield was known as the Whip City because in the turn of the century, there were 10 whip factories in there. And I mean horse and buggy whips. So it's known as the Whip City. This is the last remaining whip factory in Westfield. And you can see it needs a little help, and CPA money invested in that historic building. And they're gonna put a museum of the Whip City history in that building on the first floor. Anyone been to downtown Northampton, the Academy?
Oh,
of
yeah.
Music? Beautiful, beautiful building, right on the main drag. CPA did the entire facade over that was falling apart. Beautiful contributing building to the character of that community. This is the Abigail Adams house, the birthplace of Abigail Adams. This building was in such terrible shape, it had graffiti all over the front. And CPA funds paid for a top to bottom rehabilitation of that building. And I just read this morning that they need to do the roof over, and they applied for CPA funds that were granted. Because you can see that they are, cedar shakes. They need to be done over a little bit more often. Documents and artifacts were not part of the original CPA legislation. We helped do an amendment in 2006 to make them part of it. So now if you have, beautiful historic documents, town history, at the historical society or at the town or at the library, this is an example of badly stored, moldy, beautiful historic documents of the town that they can be rehabilitated with CPA funds. You can't digitize with CPA funds because that does nothing to actually preserve the documents, but restoring the actual books and pages is possible with CPA funds. All right, so moving on to the land protection category. You have any agricultural land in town? I bet you do, right? Farmers are getting old in Massachusetts, and the development pressures are unbelievable to sell their land for development. So preserving agricultural land has been done a ton of CPA. This was an amazing project. Believe it or not, that's in Newton, a really urbanized, that was the last remaining farm in Newton. It's about 1.5 acres. And it was going to go under development. And CPA bought the land, and then they set up a community supported agriculture, a CSA there, and rehabbed the barn. And they even rehabbed the farmhouse into affordable housing for the farm staff to live in.
Wow, cool.
So now people can walk and get their vegetables, in downtown Newton, which is terrific. We have lots of wetlands in Massachusetts and vulnerable lands. This is the Great Marsh off of Rowley and Newburyport, the largest saltwater marsh between Canada and North Carolina. And in Rowley, when they first got CPA, they bought this whole property.
Wow.
And protected it all. And it had a historic house on it, which they rehabbed and then sold to someone who runs a functions facility out of it. And just on the edge here, you can see that's an elementary school that had pretty bad fields, and they expanded their recreation park area into this little spot on the land as well. So that was kind of like a CPA trifecta, historic preservation, affordable housing. There was some, 4 units put in right there. So all 4 categories were part of that project, there. So you have private water in most cases. Where does your public water come from for half the town? Is it wells? Wells, yeah. So if you wanted to protect land around those wells, if land came up that you wanted to buy, for watershed protection, you can do that. These pictures are actually, mostly, that's the Cambridge Reservoir, or, yes. No, these are Cambridge. I don't know where that. Cambridge's reservoirs are actually in Carlisle and Lincoln. They're in other towns. And they have bought, the city of Cambridge have used CPA funds to protect all the land around their reservoirs in Carlisle and Lincoln, which is really terrific. Playgrounds are a huge use of CPA funds, splashboard parks, skateboard parks. Pickleball is hotter than a pistol. Everyone's doing pickleball with CPA funds, tennis courts, all access trails, for folks who are ably different, playgrounds, for handicapped folks, are all terrific CPA projects. Athletic fields, absolutely. I point out this one. That woman is one of my heroes. That's Marilee Hunt. She was the chair of the CPC in Bridgewater. She's now the town clerk. The boys in Bridgewater had a phenomenal baseball field. When the girls wanted to use it, they got the time at 8 o'clock when the mosquitoes were feeding them, right? They didn't have their own softball field. And Marilee was like, we're building a softball field for the girls. And there it is. And it's much nicer than the boys' field. And now if the boys want to use their field, they get the 8 o'clock mosquito time for the field. So, a terrific CPA project, and kind of one that was initiated and pushed by the CPC, seeing the needs, that they uncovered. Rail trails, bike trails, I think Bill is working on some of these sort of things. Phenomenal thing that has been funded with CPA all across the state. I love this project right here in the parks category. That's a little pocket park in Weymouth, but it used to be a dilapidated town garage. And the CPA funds ripped down the garage, remediated some of the oil that had been spilled into the ground, so cleaned it up, and then built this little pocket park. And that's the Herring River. And when they do the annual herring count of the herring coming up the river, they stand now at that little blue railing, and that's where they count the herring coming up the Herring River. So there's another skateboard park we talked about, little pocket park in Barnstable. Parks and your beautiful town common, as a park, those are all great for CPA funding. Community gardens, do you have any community gardens in town? Do you need a community garden?
I feel like we should.
We've talked about it at the TEO.
You did.
Had different discussions.
You can build a community garden with CPA. You can build all the infrastructure, the water, the fencing, and that sort of thing. You can't buy the seeds or the soil, but those are consumables, but you can build the infrastructure to create a community garden if you want.
Actually we do at the, public housing. So the seniors they have a community garden.
Gotcha.
So we do have one.
But it's just for those folks that live in that, right? Most community gardens.
Well, I think if anybody wanted to help them, they'd probably love it.
Right.
But nobody can have a plot there.
I'm terribly sorry. If I don't go home, my husband's locked out of the house.
You go. You go. This is the optional part, if anyone
I'm
has.
sorry.
Affordable housing are income limits with CPA. They're higher than you might think. These are the actual income limits for your community. We talked about that. So, these, even folks at this level sometimes have a hard time.
That's not your head, is it?
Oh,
That's mine.
Okay.
I think I have a coupon.
Also in affordable housing, we've had at least 3 communities build veterans housing with CPA funds. Dartmouth, Quincy, and Weymouth are pictured here, and others have done it as well. Often with services, the services can't be paid for by CPA, like social services, but they can pay for the building. Combining historic preservation and affordable housing is very common. This was a closed nursing home in North Andover that sat there right downtown, empty for years and years, and now they've rehabilitated that with CPA funds into affordable housing. This is another shot of that shoe factory that's now affordable housing in Middleborough. That's an amazing project in Easton. That's the Ames Shovel Factory. Around the turn of the century, every shovel sold in the entire world came from Easton, Massachusetts, from the Ames Shovel Factory. And a developer wanted to go in there and rip the whole thing down and build cookie cutter housing. And the town really wanted to save those beautiful historic buildings. So the town attracted another developer and put $8 million into the deal to make it affordable for the other developer to save the buildings and put the affordable housing in the historic buildings, which is really terrific. This is an old historic printing plant, and it's now home to 9 folks who have traumatic brain injuries who need housing. This project was so successful, the same company, the same nonprofit that did that, bought a closed inn in Rockport and replicated that with another 7 units of housing for folks with traumatic brain injuries. So a terrific project, for example. Habitat for Humanity, we probably have 50 CPA communities partner with Habitat. They are the world's most efficient builder of affordable housing because they use so many donated goods and donated labor. So I would encourage you to have your local Habitat chapter come talk to you, or Technical High School. This is the Technical High School that services Lincoln, Massachusetts, and they use the crew to rehab a house for to be sold as an affordable unit. So I did that probably in about 5 minutes, but you can see they're really cool projects that can be done with CPA funds. And I think your community is going to really love this program. It's been very successful, and we're thrilled to have Townsend in it. And please be in touch with any questions and let us help you get up and running along the way.
Thank you so much, George. I certainly want to thank you and appreciate. It was a beautiful presentation.
Great.
You addressed every question that I think that we were concerned about.
Great. Do it. You'll get a copy tomorrow morning with those bookmarks. It'll come from Chase Mack, our communications director.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think you have an official meeting that you have to close.
I'd like to have a motion to adjourn this meeting.
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you, Irene.
Second.
Whoever.
Second by who? By Marie.
No, there were 2 for a second.
All right, thanks.
I heard the one behind me, sorry.
Any discussion? All right. All right, can I take a vote?
Maria Milliken, yes.
Rob Usula, yes.
Lance McNally, yes.
Kim Brino, yes?
Irene Congdon, yes.
Robert Theron, yes.
Make
Thank you, everyone, for attending.
a motion to join the select board meeting at 7:53 PM.
Second, Lauren Different.
Good housing.
Roll call.
Give it a check. Lauren Different.
Veronica Cal, aye.
Yeah.
Okay.
You said that.
Thank you all very much.